Shalom, sorry, excuse me. Shalom, peace, peace, peace. How's everybody doing? Hopefully all is well. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Praise Yah. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be accessible in the common sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, protect, and protect. Today's message, hermano. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, mi nombre es Kofi. Ni hao, namaste. Sagay na kita niya. Ohio, I see you. Manut, Ogwan, Kamsa. Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao. Unsom. Habarigani, Akwaba, Madase, Etase, Jumbo, Bimini Kofi, the Fry Cook Time, the Wewe, Boker Toad, Boker Town, Grand Rising, greetings, Bakwarta, Balakala Chapakala, Tanai, Kukai, Headed Servants of Christ, Mashallah. Hello, everybody, I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice of the voices and speaking the unspoken. Appreciate your presence today. Sorry, as you guys know, we're working through the glare on one of these devices in particular, for one of these platforms in particular. So when I can't get away from the sunlight, or at least get a certain angle, it messes things up as far as your viewership. But prayerfully, it'll be all right for you. I believe it will be. Can everybody see and hear me okay? Mic check, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2. Mic check, can you see and hear me all right? Yes, no, maybe so. Prayerfully so. Trying to figure out how loud my voice is. It's early. Well, earlier than what I'm up to usually, and I can't come up with something with a booming voice. I'm actually in a corner, so the sound is actually amplified. So if I go in, if I get a little too loud, you guys let me know. I'm going to try to find a nice little sweet spot for us here. And once again, thankful and grateful to have everybody on here with us. We appreciate your very presence. We know that you could be doing a whole plethora of other things, but the fact that you decided to come and spend some time with us today does not go over our heads. So I'm thankful and grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you for being on once again. Thank you for rocking with us. We once again give all praise and honor to the Most High. We give all praise and honor not only to Him, but to my wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that's able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And they've already come on TikTok and said that they're restricting the live session. So I'm going to restart it one more time. If you're on TikTok, I apologize. It's kind of becoming a staple of things. Kind of becoming a staple of things. Like if we're gonna be on here, we're gonna immediately go through all these different things, which is crazy work, but it is what it is. So hopefully you guys can, all right. So if you guys are on TikTok, just come back on literally in like about 1 minute, if you can. If you're on TikTok, they've already made the point to say we're restricted. So if you can join us again, we greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being on. I apologize, but they already got us jacked up. So just give us, so if you can, if you're on TikTok, just come right back in. We appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for being on. Give me literally like a minute. I'm just gonna let it go off and then come back on. But I am excited about the word today. We're about the Q&A session today. Right, that's what today is for us. So we're thankful and grateful for another opportunity to get into His word, for you guys to ask whatever questions you would like. We're going to get ready to do our Bible pledge. So if you can, reverence Yahavah's word in any kind of way, and if you're able to stand to your feet, we would greatly appreciate you doing so. But yeah, it looks like we're gonna have a bad. I don't know if it matters. Interesting. Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to see if there's any place I can find where we're gonna have where they won't try to pull our numbers down. Probably not. Let's go ahead and get to it again. Let them come back on. Sorry, y'all, for all this. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Let's see if, I guess maybe you're on TikTok again. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be tough. It is what it is. I guess they're just gonna have to restrict us. But thank you all for being on. I appreciate you. Alrighty, we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna do our Bible pledge. If you are able to rise to your feet. We're trying to signal us. It might not happen today. Alrighty, so we'll go ahead and get started. Anyways, thank you for your patience with us. I'm not sure. They're probably going to restrict it on a certain platform. That's okay, but it'll just be restricted. Let's go ahead and get into this. So thank you everybody for being on. We lost some persons because I had to restart one of our platforms. That's okay. Thank you everybody for being on. We appreciate you. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you're able to rise to your feet and reverence of Yahavah's word, we thank you in advance for doing that as well. Alrighty. We came back on one platform. They're messing with us today. That's all right. Okay. So, Tadat Mashabachin, thank you family for being on. We appreciate you. We're going to go ahead and get right into this message. And thank you again. Today is Q&A, so you guys get to lead the way as far as your questions, comments, concerns, etc. You're doing a great work today, making sure the persons cannot find this. Okay. Now 0 persons are on. I might be messing with TikTok all day. Yeah. Messing around. Okay. All right, we got some persons finding this. All right. Welcome back in. All right, how you doing? Double OG, triple OG, and anybody else coming in. Let's go ahead and get started. It's going to be one of those days. Social media-wise, it is what it is. Praise Yah. Just pray for us. Send a petition, Shalach, up until the Most High Yah. And let's go ahead and do what He's called us to do here. All righty. So you can put your device or your right hand or your Bible in the air. Just repeat after me. Bible pledge goes as follows. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahavah is Lord. No sort of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. Hashem Yahavah. Amen. Hashem, His name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated to go back to what you're doing in the presence of the Most High Yah. So, prayerfully, whatever's going on with the signal and all that stuff, will take care of itself. Tadah, my Shabbat. Thank you, family, for being on with us. So today is Q&A, right? So when it comes to Q&A, basically you guys have the wheel, so to speak, right? So whatever questions, comments, and concerns that you'd like to go over, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat. It's for you to, put out there for us, and prayerfully, prayerfully we'll be able to go and have some great dynamic conversation off of it. But today is on you guys. So whatever questions, comments, and concerns that you have, I apologize with all the stuff being messed up. I didn't say shalom and hello to everybody. Please forgive me with all the stuff just trying to get on. I missed that part. I'm sorry. How you doing, Sister Dawn, Sister Beck, Matt, Carla, Dan, Deborah. It's all right. Somebody had nothing to do with whoever in Cosine Theaters, whoever that was. How you doing, Elder Tamara? Praying for you. Hopefully you got some rest. Wally, Joy, Michael, Robert, and anybody who was on before. I see Deborah Jones up in there. Everybody, we appreciate you. Looks like they're kind of making sure that we can't come on today, at least on certain platforms, and that's all right. If there's 2 or 3 gathered, Yahavah would be here. So we're thankful to everybody. Of course, even more than just the 2 or 3. So, you said TikTok was sold to Oracle. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, in all these different things that are going on, right? All these things that are happening, and thank y'all for the love. There obviously are some things that we can talk about with many different ways, but today the Q&A is for you. We are in the midst of our holiday season. That being said, even if you have something outside of what we've been talking about for normalcy as far as our, through the series, if you have questions outside of it, even questions that you think are outside the Bible, although there's a biblical prism to look at anything through. But I'm here to answer, your questions, comments, concerns. So if there's any questions that you have, please feel free to let them be known, to voice your concerns, even about things that are happening worldwide. If there's some stuff that happened with, holy days even, and maybe, somebody's like, I don't really understand this or that. If something's happened as far as, even if it's something that I'm preaching, I promise you this is not a thing of hurt feelings. If you were to say, something, I wouldn't be upset or frustrated if you're not in agreement with something. Matter of fact, if you want me to further explain something to make sure that we're all in agreement, I have no problem doing that as well. So I just want to clear that up in the beginning of this Q&A here at SOC that says hashtag a safe place. That's what we're developing, right? And so in that, we are making sure that we take some time out to answer some questions. So if you have any questions, comments, or concern on what is today, September the 25th. So on this day, September 25th, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, that's what we're here for. If not, I'll kind of maybe go to some topics that I know have been really big in our community and stuff like that, but whichever way you guys want to take it. So I know they made this kind of difficult today, and they keep trying to take us down and all this other stuff, but hopefully you guys can, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let us know. So anybody want to start us off? Oh, okay, be safe when you travel, Auntie Mary. Be safe. Yeah, thank you for coming on. He said, is it okay to observe feasts on Sukkot without tents inside our dwellings? Okay, I see that one. All right, so we'll go ahead and start there. Once again, today they're doing excellent work of suppression today. Making sure nobody can find us. If you're able to share, I know there's only a few of us that are getting through for some reason. If you're able to share, make sure people know that we're on. Please feel free to do so. I'm going to send a couple things out to share, see if it helps at all. Quite possibly because it's been taking us so long to get on, some persons might not even think that we're on today. That's okay. Just because they on one doesn't mean we're not on. All right. So send this out a couple times real quick to a few folk at least. Alrighty. But hopefully everybody's doing well. Thank you all for being on with us. We appreciate you. We really do. Hope that you guys are having a great day. Alrighty. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into the Q&A. We already did our Bible pledge and everything. I do apologize once again. We're having a time today just getting on, at least on a couple of the platforms, but we'll go ahead and get started. So right now, so today is Q&A, and thanks, babe. My wife is on. The Honorable Alma, as always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A and D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, a biologist by degree. We thank you for being on, babe. Love you very much. Thankful and grateful for what Yahavah is doing in your constant and consistent growth as the divine feminine beauty and standard for a wife that you are today. Let's see. Praise God. All right. Okay. All right. So the first question that I have today is Q&A. And even though there's just a few of us, the numbers are probably growing on that. So, and thank you for those that are sharing the live. I see you. Thank you so much. Is it Nika? Okay, Nika, got deleted already for something. Well, welcome anyways. Thank you, moderators. I see you, Sister Dawn. Alrighty. So, first question today: is it all right to go ahead and do Sukkot or Sabbakat, or basically be inside for the Feast of Tabernacles? Our goal, right? I'm going to just start off like this. Our goal is to try our best to make sure that we're intense. Also, the responsibility is to try to get together and be inside, right? That's the goal, right? How you doing, Sister Deborah? Not Deborah, who asked the question, but Sister Deborah, how you doing? Welcome to both of you. All right, so our goal is, as much as it's humanly possible, to do the law, especially, but we have to recognize too, once again, we are in the land of our captivity. So the goal also too would be out with others, to come together as one, to be out there as much as possible. I know there's certain things as far as age range, even if you have your own land or own home, to be out in the dark, especially depending on what your age range might be, if you're male or female, or how safe you might be, what neighborhood you live in. Obviously those things all come together, right? So if you're in a position to where you're going to do it virtually and, even do some things with us, obviously if you're inside your own home, or if you couldn't get off your job and things of that nature, or, depending, some of us in different situations with that, right? Some of us are retired, some of us don't have jobs, some of us don't need the jobs, some of us do need the jobs, whatever the case might be. Some can't get off for the entire time, and this is, and this is why we are working towards like sovereignty, things of that nature. So, short answer, it is all right for you if you can't make it for certain reasons, safety reasons, things like that. Obviously, we want you to be in a safe place. Even when persons come to Feast of Tabernacles with us, there's been persons who have come to their first events with us or whatever and don't know anything about it until you see husbands or wives show up and be like, we're going to check y'all out, And then they don't necessarily believe what we believe. They make sure their spouse is safe. Then they go back to doing what they do, which, by the way, I think is commendable. But yes, there's different things that happen. How you doing, Sister Sabrina? How you doing, Darius? So, and how you doing, Sister Jennifer, if I didn't say so already, old servant. So, yeah, there's certain things that if you are speaking to it, like it's because we're in the land of our captivity, because a bunch of stuff's not together all the way yet, because we're not coming together yet to be a nation, but a lot of us are coming together just for service. Welcome back, El Tamara. Hopefully you're feeling all right once again. And sorry about those that we had all that signal issue and then issue with the platform, but it is what it is. But yeah, there's a lot of, so short answer, it is all right. The goal for us eventually, right, or even if it's not us, unfortunately, it might be our grandchildren or great-grands or our children, etc. The goal is trying to become a community and a nation and get back to things like having land, set aside, set apart, sanctified with food and all this stuff on it, to where this stuff is not even a big deal anyways. Right now it's a big deal because the way the system is set up, even though they say there's religious freedoms, they set everything up to where even your religious freedoms are difficult to adhere to, because many of you are in situations to where you have to make choices like, do I go to the Feast of Tabernacles and possibly lose my job and be hungry, right? Or haven't learned how to be able to go, okay, well, I'm going to look to you guys in HR, and this is how lawfully I can make sure that I address and say, hey, I need off Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Pentecost, Day of Atonement, Feast of Trumpets, I just read it, Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Feast of Tabernacles, right? Like, we're supposed to, we're supposed to have those things protected, and they are, but a lot of times we don't know that, yeah, you can actually go in there, and you don't even have to have a whole lot of so-called mafia or anything like that, but, you go into these places and you can ask for the time off, but also too, I get like there's travel, there's a whole bunch of stuff, right, to where it's set up. So the goal is eventually to have this stuff set up. We've been trying to for a while, and really it gets to a place to where this is just an effort thing as well too. There's a lot of persons that live near each other, even on shout outs and stuff. When you see the shout out work, you'd be surprised at how many persons are like right there next to you, right in your city, right in your hour, 2 hour at the most radius, especially areas like New York, New Jersey, Philly, Baltimore, Maryland, DC, Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Grand Prairie, just a lot of these different things. If we actually took inventory of other persons that are there, and I can keep on going. There's more and more places, right, where we definitely have pockets developed. Detroit, the beat, Chi-Town. We've had a lot of persons in and out, but it's like at some point this is one of the things, and I've said this years ago. I had to when I was literally like overworking myself, literally breaking down, like breaking apart. Still having some issues because of that time trying to do so much by myself, and just like Moses' father had to tell him, or Moses' stepfather, Moses' father-in-law had to tell him, I had to listen to my Father who art in heaven and take it in and be like, yo, and even my spiritual father, and be like, yeah, I can't do this all by myself. So there comes a time that we're like, that's why we have ministers in different areas, and even with the ministers being in different areas, still look at them as persons who serve the community. So if the community saying we're going to come together, then you guys, we all, right? Whether it be myself, a minister, we're all ministers, but if you want to say myself, an elder, a minister, but we're all ministers on staff. We just have different positions on the staff, and it's important that we would even come together, and even if you don't have to be a minister to make that call. If you know who your minister is, or you have these text trains for your group, or whatever the case, or you even make a text train for your group, you got some numbers of person that live with you, whatever. Hey, this holiday is coming up. We're going to be together here, right? Right, I'm gonna make sure that we check in with Pastor Kofi and make sure that everything's done. But if there's a certain amount of you that aren't gonna be able to make it anyways to the main deal, then okay, those of you that are here, it don't matter if it's 4 of us, 5 of us, it don't matter if it's 2, where 2 or 3 are gathered, right? Doesn't matter if it's 100, but we have enough where we can start coming together and make this live, right? And so that's the goal for these holy days, but that once again takes a lifestyle, right? It takes one's psychology to change, or psyche, or the soul to change, right? So that question opens up a lot of other different things. Short answer, yes. If you're not able for particular reasons to be on it, that's between you and Yah, right? If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel safe, if there's age stuff going on, if it's hard for you to get up off the ground, if you're going to be by yourself, if you're in a neighborhood you would trust it, of course we want you to be safe. Right? There are persons who have come with us, and we have to find different ways of making sure they're safe and that they can be taken care of as well. We want you to be safe, ultimately, right? And how you doing, Sister Casey? What up? Blessings to you, right? So so kind of is one of those things that, because we're in the land of our captivity. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? It's kind of one of those things, since we're in the land of our captivity. How you doing, Brother Alton? That we are, when you're in the land of your captivity, you get captivated by a lot of different things, right? So in your captivation, you kind of begin to do some things that are more of the enemy, right? Because the enemy is the one who has you captive. But the one who has delivered us from captivity, he wants us to start getting to a lifestyle and a point to where we're separate from the system. That's where the privacy comes in. That's when being a sovereign comes in versus being a citizen. That's when being private enough to actually go, okay, I don't have to make decisions, right, and having a sovereign mind. And even if I have to work in the system for right now, every step that I'm doing is taking me closer to being private. It's taking me closer to being independent enough from the system, right? Even if I have a job, right? If I have a job, if you're blessed to have a job with one of those jobs where you get 2 weeks, immediately go in, like you have the beginning of your quarters. Mostly if you're working for a corporation, if you're working for the government, which is a corporation as well, or United States government, really most of your government's corporations. But if you're working for a corporation, and now here comes the time, right? Here comes the time where it's the beginning of the quarter. What are they doing? That's why Jewish persons try to say Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the new year. When the reality is that this is, when we did Feast of Trumpets. Feast of Trumpets is the first day of the 7th month of the year. That's what Tanakh or Torah says, right? So the reason they do that, though, is because for them they have a business year, right? And how you doing, Sister Michelle, if I didn't say so already, right? So we do our best to make sure, or I'm sorry, they do their best to start their year because they're starting corporates and stuff. They're starting financial stuff, right? So that's why you're going to come up on October, November, December, and they're going to be starting. They're going to treat October like it is the beginning of the year, right? So that also so they can be ahead, but they treat October. So they do September, say it's the beginning of the year. As far as they change the holy day, say September is the beginning of the year, and then they start to do business October on, right? So, but you're about to see that happen now. You're in the world, but not of it. So knowing you're in the world or in the system, if you have to work for these corporations, but you're not of it, you still need to deal with the holy days. This is when you can start saying to yourself, okay, I need to block off X amount of time. I need to go in already and know that I have, and everybody's different. I've had jobs where you had no vacation time before, right? I've had, times where you get liberty, but you have to ask for it in the military, and then you can have leave, and you try to stack your leave, and you're basically getting a certain amount guaranteed every year, right? So what I tell persons is try your best to do things like, let's say this is just a goal of many persons when they get the job, they want 2 weeks off if they can get it. If you got 2 weeks, Feast of Tabernacles, Feast of Unleavened Bread, ask for them, right? We usually put the calendar out and usually start putting it out early, and even if we don't, right? But ask for it the year before, 2025, so that's in about 2026 holy days, right? Know that you're gonna need, besides those 2 weeks, then know that you're gonna need whether you get paid time off or not, right? Because there's times that we take off even if it's not paid anyways, right? So there's times that you work from home, even if it's not getting paid for it, because you'd rather be at home, right? And I have to deal with certain things, so you try to get out off of work early and still get paid in your time, right? So on what is it, the first? So besides those 2 weeks, then you need Passover, you need a day for Passover, you need a day for Day of Atonement, you need a day for Feast of Trumpets, and you need a day. What's the fourth one I'm missing now? Oh, you need a day for Pentecost, right? Passover, Pentecost, Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, right? You put that's 2 days and 4 weeks. So kind of sort of like what you do with your year anyway, playing around. So, hey, I need these days. It actually should work a lot for you because our holy days don't conflict with their holy days. So when everybody is asking off for Christmas for them, cool, you still at home, right? Because you already had your time off. When everybody's trying to get, when somebody goes, right, and you can get that Christmas bonus, right? While everybody else is getting the Christmas bonus for going home, you get the Christmas bonus and get that times 2 or whatever they do with your job, a time and a half, for working during that time. I know even places like Amazon and stuff do that to a certain degree still. Right? So, you get it even in the busiest places and the biggest warehouses, whatever. Right? Some places shut down for Christmas, sure, some don't. But even if they do, this is when that faith kicks in and the works kick in, and we should be private enough, even in our business, to where, see, if one is private enough in their business or has enough stuff going on as far as investing and things of that nature, then yeah, even if I have a job, and I've been there, done that. I'm talking from experience, been there, done that, to where I'm gonna go do a holy day, and when I do this holy day, it's gonna be like literally with Service of Christ. I've done stuff where it's like, okay, we're gonna put a holy day together, and besides asking for people to pay for hotels, pretty much everything else is gonna be on us. And we're gonna make sure we start, that we do so properly. And I'm gonna take off, even though I have no vacation days, no such thing as vacation days, because even though I'm working more hours, I have one of them gigs, or a few of those gigs, where even though I was working more hours than everybody else, I wanted to have my time to when I could have it. So I technically was a part-time worker, even though I might work 60 to 80, even more than that hours sometimes in a week. You see, like I've been there, done that, where they do it dirty. You know what I'm saying? But we still have an opportunity to fulfill those holy days. So it kind of is a great question. Ultimately, the answer is yes, it's all right. That being said, it takes us into a lot of different places we can go. How you doing, Static? Thanks for being on with us. Thank you for anybody who's sharing, reposting. I appreciate you. How you doing, Cheddar? Excuse me. How you doing, Teep Your Life? Any other questions, comments, concerns? Today is Q&A. Q&A for September 25th. Hola, Alberto. Gracias por tu presencia. Any other questions, comments, and concerns? We got a lot of time left. If anybody does have one. How does one become sovereign? I mean, so great question, Sister Michelle. Sovereignty is a way of life, as I always say. So a lot of persons, Baba Michelle, it's my pleasure. So sovereignty, and thank God for the love. Sovereignty is a way of life. A lot of persons look at just the paperwork aspect. So when we talk sovereignty, we have classes on SOC University that one can go through as well. But the main thing as far as sovereignty is that it's a lifestyle. If one is sovereign, what one is a ruler, and one is free, right? Now, free comes with a price, which means that you have to do certain things to obtain the freedom, or at least certain things to obtain the right to walk through the door, who gave his life for our freedom, our Messiah, right? But sovereignty is a way of life. So sovereignty, in essence, right? We're going to put, of course, scripture with this too, because that's what we should do, right? But sovereignty, in essence, is sovereignty, in essence, is being separate from the system, learning how to literally be in the system, but not remember the word world. In the Greek, it's something about cosmos with a K. That simply means system. So whenever you see this word world, being in the world, not of it, it's talking about systemic issues, systematic issues, things that are a system, right? Yeah, so our goal is to be in the system, but not even have to depend on it, right? Like we might depend on it, but then the goal is slowly but surely to come out of it. And that's when nation building, part of nation building, persons keep talking about coming together to be a nation. If you're going to be a nation, the nation is not self-sufficient, but the nation is sufficient within the law, within the laws of the king. Right? However sufficient the king is how sufficient the nation is for us, right, in the kingdom. So our sufficiency is not operating on the same level because of the same things that everybody else is looking for, right? This is why even when Paul has a thorn in his side, and if you do some research on that, there's a belief that he even had, this, whatever this thorn actually was, it seems to be figurative, but whatever that was that he was dealing with, and he went to sought the Lord 3 times. It seems as if, when you go to the scriptures, it seems as if he probably was doing this over 21 years, going back to the Most High. And what does he say? He says, and Yahavah's response, or Yahshua response, at the end is, hey, my grace within itself, right, is sufficient. And what does the word grace mean? Even in the Hebrew Khan, right, and I'm talking about Paleo Hebrew, I don't qualify though, because the first doesn't need to be qualified. So in the Avda Hebrew, the original, or even in one person said it's Khan, in the Greek it is, grace is actually charis, which is the beginning of charisma. Charisma is when you give your grace to somebody else. What does the word grace mean? It does not mean unmerited favor. The word grace is charis, is the beginning of the word charisma. Charisma means gift. So what are you gifting? What are you ma at the end? Charis is who you are. So if Yah is in you and you are in him, that is his charis, right? That is his grace in you and your grace in him, right? By definition of the word, the denotation of the word, right? But then if you go into charisma, it says I'm giving a piece of myself, right? So the goal is to make sure that Yah is in you. Also, too, don't forget Badashat Taf Chet, or what we call nowadays Genesis 28, when when Jacob, or who we now know as Israel, went back to Padan Aram, right, looking for a wife, and he had the dream. He had a dream at the place that would later be called Bethel. There's a place where it's called Bethel is supposed to be the place where heaven meets earth. So any Israelite that was here, who was a child of Israel, must also live in a place where heaven meets earth. This is why heaven is inside of you, right? And not just on the outside. That's not just simply poetic. That's because if you are in the kingdom, and if you are grafted in any part of this nation, then it has to be inside of you. Now, as far as sovereignty though, even deeper, right? I'm just, right, and it's a surface level thing because sovereignty should be taught. Sovereignty really is a law, right? And how you doing? I'm sorry, is it, I don't know if it's Mexis Jones? I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Thank you for being part of the community. I appreciate you, right? So when you talk about sovereignty, a lot of persons also too get lost in the sauce of just the paperwork. And I'm not saying it's not wrong to, but a lot of persons get lost in the paperwork, but you have to be separate enough, right? So yes, we teach like
how to do your DS-11 form properly, so that you can get your, that you can get your passport redone. And once it's redone, it'll say that you're a non-citizen national, which you're allowed to do. Once you're a non-citizen, it says so right on the paperwork. Once you're a non-citizen national, you don't have to be you're not considered to be a citizen anymore. You even show up in the system, right? Different if you were to get pulled over. Now, we don't believe this means you have the right to break the law. We believe that you should uphold the law greater than anybody else. We just know what it is to be separate, right? We try to separate ourselves as much as it's humanly possible. Doesn't mean that I can't go anywhere, travel. Doesn't mean that I can't live in a nice spot. It doesn't mean that I can't pay for anything at the store. But it's saying I'm separating myself as much as possible, so that, I'm an ambassador of where I come from, right? Oh, yeah, sure, Sister Michelle. I can even just send you some of the stuff, but yeah, I'll try to remember. I'll try to look for it. Thank you for the question, right? Because sovereignty is a way of life. So one who's sovereign is saying that they are what? If you're sovereign, you're saying basically that you are a nation within yourself, or you belong to a nation, or you're the leader of your nation, right? So I can now. So a lot of persons don't have private, like put it like this. It's so ubiquitous, right, in the fabric of society, that a lot of persons don't even catch this part. There's not even a such thing for most persons. As a sovereign, and I'm not trying to say this just because it's the church. I want you to hear this. For most people, there's not such thing as a sovereign church. A lot of persons don't know that, right? Because in order for a church to be sovereign, right, you'd have to be separated from the government. And how you doing, Brother Yahavah? Right, Akhir Yahavah, Tada. Right? I'm gonna say that again because somebody missed that. Somebody missed that. That's an important part. I'm not saying this once again. This is not just talking about bad about Christianity. This is giving you a truth that you might not, because we don't comprehend what sovereignty is. And if I be honest, a lot of us followers of the way, because we don't know how law works and care to learn how it works, we're not necessarily sovereign either. Like, this is why SOC actually got paperwork behind it, numbers, and people be like, oh man, I thought you want to be separated from the system. I am. I went and I filed paperwork to ensure that the system recognizes that this is not a fake entity, right? And everybody wants me to make SOC, make it the LLC, make it the church. No, because once I do that, it's not a real entity anymore. Yeah, you can ask the question. I'll try to get to it when I can. But yeah, please feel free to ask whatever questions you like. Thank you for being on. Right? So there's a difference between a sovereign and a citizen. There's a difference between free and who belongs. Right? And one of the things you have to understand is that how you got Cherokee to stand in North Carolina, praise God, but yeah, there's a lot of persons, well, they had to incorporate, right? So they'll get you to incorporate, but once you're incorporated, and it depends on, well, let me say it like this, the incorporation is still to protect you. So I get why persons do it. I'm not saying never get incorporated, I'm not saying, but just realize a corporation is a fake entity, which means that, right, put it like this. See, it gets difficult in this moment. Let me go back to the church situation, and then hopefully it'll make sense as I go to the others, right? So, not only are they incorporated, my main point and focus that I actually wanted to talk about today, thank you for getting me back on track. My main point I actually wanted to get across with that is when you see, and who's that? I'm sorry. Is it Raz King, 873? How long is the process? Like I said, the process basically can happen once you get your paperwork done, as far as on paper, but the process of living, right, is the main point, right? So watch this. What is it that allows, I'm gonna say this because, especially a lot of preachers, they say that they don't believe in the law. I'm gonna ask a very simple question, right, to you guys. You guys help me out in the chat. No wrong answers, just asking for y'all to help out so we're thinking together. Let's do a little think tank, okay? Quick question for you. What allows your pastor, apostle, bishop, whatever, to be ordained, ministers, etc.? What allows them to be ordained, or what allows them to be licensed? In other words, what order? Who do they have to check in with to be ordained, to be allowed to do the ordinances of your assembly? And who is it that licenses them to be able to even get to the place where they get ordained? Right? I just want to show you something, see, because even the paperwork side is crucial, but we got to go through this. That's right. Come on, y'all nailed it on the head. How you doing, Rhythm Mace? Right? Y'all nailed it, right? The state they belong to. Whether we're talking about Maryland State or the state of Maryland, Florida State or the state of Florida. Those are two different things too, right? But either way, they have to go to the government, right? They can take a class and online nowadays too, right? You devoted Israelite under a bishop, sure. So all of them, I'm just letting you know, whichever person you're under, all of them fall under this thing, right? So the ordinances, now different Christian groups, right, have different belief systems on this. I'll admit that. That being said, so in most Christians, most Protestants believe there's only two ordinances. It's not the truth. It's not true. We just showed that to you guys when we went through Leviticus chapter 22, right? And we were going to Leviticus 22, spent about 4 days in that. We showed you in there that there's more ordinances, way more than that, right? Or at least another one that we have simply in how we're supposed to give offering and sacrifice when it comes to the holy days, right? So there's obviously more than that as far as ordinances. How you doing, Sharon? Thanks for being part of the community. You said state is a for-profit corporation. Well, yeah, well, state also can mean country, but once again, it could be a fake country. Like, for example, the United States is supposed to be 50 countries put together, right? But the federation or the federal government or that you call United States is actually a corporation. If you look up United States Code, right, in 28 USC, you will discover subsection A of section 15, or article 15, subsection A, you will discover that the United States is a corporation by law, right? So a corporation moves different than an actual country. So for us, there's a lot of reasons why we will never, probably become a trusted us, and that we might build some trust so that we can be in the system, not of it, and if there's things that they try to take from us in the future, they won't be able to. They're also down the road, as I've said before, the goal is from there. I'm not trying to do this for real, but on paper, we might become a religion or a religious state. If you become a religious state, you become like the Roman Catholic Church. And somebody says, why wouldn't we be Roman Catholic? And we're not going to do what they do, but we want the freedom they have. You know, the Roman Catholic Church, if you go to a Roman Catholic Church right now, anytime you go into a Roman Catholic Church, you step in the country. See, a lot of you aren't set up like that. Your churches aren't set up like that. They don't have freedom. But Roman Catholic Church, if you go to their mass today, if you just go into a basilica to worship or to pray or whatever the case might be, you just step inside. If you step where the nuns live, if you go where your children, some of you send your children there for school, for private school, they're going to another country by law. You didn't even know that. You should have got your child a passport. I'm so serious. Y'all think I'm not even lying. Like, your child is going to another country, but you're not aware of that. They're not stepping in, right? So even though Servants of Christ, we would never try to be a religion per se, as far as like, oh yeah, everybody, this is the only way. No, Yahavah is the way. He's the truth. He's the life. And religion technically just means a repetitive manner of doing the same thing. People get together as a group, but you do stuff like that. Persons do things like that down the road. What? Because they're building a nation. Right? For example, if you want to make sure that your nation has land to start to where nobody will be able to take your nation's land, what do? You bury somebody there. What is it that Abraham did? Bought a burial plot. Need a burial plot for my wife. Bury me there. Bury Isaac there. Bury Rebecca there. Bury Israel there. Bury Leah there. Right? Right? You go to these places, you make it a country. You're making it your own. You're making sure that you take ownership of it. Right? You get to take ownership of it. It's a law. It's mandatory, right? So you're doing certain things to set yourself up. But going back to it, right, if the reverend or the elder or whatever position we're talking about, prophet, prophetess, evangelist, pastor, apostle, bishop, presiding prelate, whatever, if they, all of them, just about, look at their certificates, right? Listen to what says as they're given the certificate. By the power invested in me, but then they have to say by whom. And when they say by whom, is it the Most High? Is it private? Or is it by the state of? Is it public? And if it's public, you know the word public just means government. The word private means outside of, or at least not under the same jurisdiction. So many are not private enough to worship. This is what sovereignty truly is leading us to. The way that we're trying to show it to you is that a lot of persons are not private enough to even worship. Remember what we say all the time, what did we say, right, with Moses. When Moses is sent back, or he's sent back to Kemet, and he's told to talk to Pharaoh, his first responsibility is not Pharaoh, let my people go completely. Thank you, Brother Thomas, appreciate you, right? His first response is this first, when he's first told to go back to Pharaoh, he is not told to go back and say, hey, let my people go, period. No, no, no. No, sir. No, ma'am. That's not what he said. What's the first thing that he said? He said, let my people go 3 days journey, that means 60 miles away, into the wilderness to worship me for 2 weeks. In other words, true worship, yes, we should be able to worship Yah no matter where we go, no matter what situation. But if you want to get the truest worship, the truest sense of who the Most High is, you can only do it separate from the world, separate from the system, separate from the beast, separate from the government, and do so. I'm not saying you can't worship him at all. I'm not saying you can't go into a building. I'm not saying you can't come to whatever you have to. I'm not saying you can't praise and worship at your job. I'm not saying that you can't pray. No, no, no. What I'm saying is that what Yah's true sense for us is for us to become what? A royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, a chosen generation, to show forth the praises of the Most High Yah. Israel is the woman that's represented in Revelation chapter 12. Once the woman gives birth to the child that we know as our Messiah, Yahavah, she immediately separates herself. She goes into a place called the wilderness. If you don't know what the word wilderness is referring to, the word wilderness simply just means that you are not fitting into society, or something is wild, you do not fit into society. So if someone goes into the wilderness, the wilderness, all you're saying is that person's going to a place that's stranger or foreign or wild, right? And some would look at this as even underneath the system that you're in. So if you leave the world, you go into the wilderness. Which is why eventually the children of Israel, they end up leaving and going where? Into the wilderness. To do what? To build a nation. Excuse me. And ultimately, they were supposed to go into the wilderness to build a nation. They were ultimately supposed to go into the wilderness, building a nation, and then go into Canaan. And because the children of Israel were not ready and were not obedient enough, then they had to stay in the wilderness, stay separated from everybody long enough that finally when it came time to go into the land of Canaan, that old stinking thinking had literally died off. Right? How you doing, Chuck? Well, thanks for being part of the community. See, all those things, see, that's true sovereignty. We're trying to separate the mind. We've separated, but we still have persons that build golden calves. They still idolize and worship certain things they shouldn't. Right? We're still trying to separate, as far as, hey, stop worrying so much about Republican versus Democrat. It'll help you to become free. Hey, stop worrying so much about persons who literally, they say that they can't obey the law. They say you shouldn't obey the law. Or Mosaic law. No matter what stuff like Romans 10:5 says, Romans 3:1-2, Romans 11:1-2, like these places say you should forbid. Romans chapter 7, you should forbid anybody that tells you the law is not spiritual. Right? You should, it says Elohim forbid. You should get away from persons. You should forbid that mindset. Forbid when somebody starts saying to you that the Mosaic law doesn't matter. Paul says, tell that person to shut up. Right? Forbid that mindset. Don't even give that stuff your time. Maybe shut up is a little strong. Right? But basically tell that person they out of their mind. I forbid, I cannot think like you because the law matters. Right? And so sovereigns, we believe in following the law. We also believe in making sure that we know that there's laws, universal laws, right? Natural laws, substantive law, right? We know that there's laws, common law of equity, maritime laws, etc. We know that there's ways of making sure that we can be considered to be separate, as we're always supposed to be, right? Right, that's the goal. So our goal with sovereignty is not to just teach you to sign a piece of paper, because a lot of persons sign a piece of paper and they give sovereignty a bad name because they still aren't even necessarily able and trained and versed enough in law to actually be separate, and they still do things that are illegal, and because they think that they are separate, that they're allowed to do illegal things because they're private enough. No. And even people who find the loopholes, we don't like that. True sovereigns, true persons that are separate, and we're separating not just so that we can say, look, I'm separate, right? We're separating because we want the freedom, right? And once again, nothing is truly free. An offering is given for everything. Something has to be given up to be able to get something. So we're trying to do certain things and sacrifice and give even, and also remove, even if it hurts to remove ourselves from certain people or certain companies or certain ways of thought or things that are nostalgic. We're removing ourselves from those places so now we can actually have a true worship situation. Remember, the person who is licensed to minister, if they're licensed by the state, can only do what the state licenses, right? The person who is an elder or a reverend, right, and then take whatever position you want, because all of those positions are just the same thing. They just have another title that within your little group you can say somebody's higher than the other, but all of them check in with the state. The only reason why you can marry somebody, right, according to the state, is you have to be willing to say what the state says. You have to be willing to follow what the state does, and you have to be willing to even, you have to even be willing to say what the state says, follow what the state does, and you have to be under the state jurisdiction. So if you are married by somebody who's part of the state, then guess who your marriage belongs to? How you doing, Yahavah? Right? Guess who your marriage belongs to? Your marriage belongs to the state. Your marriage doesn't belong to Yah, and it doesn't belong to you. It's not private. So how can two people become one, right, and have a threefold cord, and the third part of the cord is supposed to be the Most High Yah? How do you three become one? The husband, the wife, Yahavah. How do three become intertwined, right? And the reality is that you're saying that you're intertwined, you want to be intertwined, you want to be together, you want to work together as one. That's what we say. Excuse me. But you're not licensed through Yah. You're not ordained to do ordinances the way that Yah says do them. You're licensed and ordained by the state. So even the person that's going to say, the Most High said, and all this, and I want you to know, hallelujah, that Yah, he's worthy, and all this stuff they're going through, they're not free. Right? This is why you guys will ask certain things. Why does our church still do blah, blah? Some of the stuff they're doing is not because that the Holy Spirit led us. A lot of it is because it's ordained by the state. They have to follow the state's ordinances because that's who gave them permission to do what they do. How you doing, Minister Sameah? Right? Right? So a lot of persons aren't even catching that and thinking about that. You're dealing with a lot of stuff that's ordained by the state. But your marriage was never supposed to be part of the Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greco-Roman mindset that's now mixed with iron and clay, or what you call Christian. It was supposed to be separate the whole time. It was supposed to be separate the whole time, right? This is why you're supposed to separate yourself. So true sovereignty is our responsibility of separating, working out, right, salvation with fear and trembling, and going back to the origin of man and things and what Yah had for us as free, right? Being free. Doing what it takes to be free, remain free, and stop allowing, like, not just the thoughts, but even the things, our works, to be things that are so controlled by the world, right? Even going back to the question about the holy days. It's hard when you're not sovereign to keep up with the holy days. It just is. It doesn't mean that you can't celebrate them at all, but it gets harder and tougher. The more in the system you are, the less time you have for such things. So you got to set it up from the beginning. You got to make a decision, and that might mean that the world gives you less, which is why the kingdom's supposed to come together, because there needs to be a reward. I'll finish on this point, and then whatever question is up next, I hope I didn't miss one. You know, today's Q&A today, so feel free. to do Q&A with us, or to ask a question, comment, or concern, and be part of what we're doing. But yeah, the world, the system, and thank you for the love, man. The system is maddening, and Satan is designed once again to get you away. So sovereignty is our responsibility to make sure that we have a reward. A lot of persons don't leave because if I leave, what's the reward? And this is why you have to become a nation. You have to realize becoming a nation means that if somebody's going to leave the world, right, to where their needs are supplied to come into the kingdom, that we need to work towards a kingdom that's safe enough for them to come into, to where all their needs shall be supplied. Right? Why we say, well, black man and blah, blah. Okay, question. If you have a so-called black man, or Negro man, or Israelite man, or one man who's part of the nation, grafted in, whatever the case, right? If you have a man, if you have a husband, he has to be a kingdom husband, and he's doing what he's supposed to do, what is the reward for his doing what he's supposed to do? Because in the world, they tell him, who cares? You're just supposed to, blah, blah, this and that. Is there any reward for him being a kingdom husband in our system? If there is, why would he try to do so? Right? You have, black women did whatever. Okay, cool. What? Not cool, but black women did all right, I hear you. That being said, if the so-called black woman, Negro woman, Israelite woman, nation, national woman, etc., a wife, not just a woman, a wife, a kingdom wife, if she does what she's supposed to do, what is her reward? Right? Now I get it. The world says they have their reward and maybe we shouldn't compare, and we shouldn't, but I'm just being honest. Right? When they come in here and there's a sister and she's doing everything on her grind, what is the reward for her? Right? What is the reward? Will she be protected? Or will it just be she shows up, she opens up a Bible, she puts a covering over her head, and you'll say, okay, she's an Israelite woman. Will she be nurtured? She's a nurturer, but will she be nurtured? Will she get the vital minerals, the vitamins that she needs spiritually, emotionally, physically? Right? There's a boy on the street. He on the street, and he preaching on the corner, or whatever. There's a boy in the street, he running game, he's selling drugs. Sometimes they one and the same, unfortunately, right? If we be honest, if you know what I'm talking about, who I'm talking about, they be out there on the street corner and all this stuff. What is the thing that is a reward for him to come in, right? Like, it doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be something, it is money, but money isn't even real. Money gets you real things. So what are the real things he's gonna get? What is the praise he's gonna get? What is the praise she's gonna get? What are the things that we're gonna do to make sure? This is why you become sovereign, because all your rewards come through the beast. All of them, for a lot of us, all of our rewards come through the beast. If we don't do what the beast wants, we don't get money. But when you control, really it's not even control, when Yah is in control, and then you go on his land and do what he tells you, so that what he says controls, the stuff he's put that's he set, that controls all, you use the same thing to control what he's given you. Right? This is why, yes, the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just. But first things first, in the same verse, before that, you have to take care of your children's children. If you're not thinking about generational wealth, then you're not thinking about something that should be released to you, because the wealth of the wicked, the wealth of who? The wealth of the wicked. Even the wicked have enough sense to make sure that they're doing things that they can sow into the children for generations to come. Right? I ain't going into the deep, right? So these are the things, we need to look at some, right? And entertain those thoughts as well. All right, how you doing, Russell? Next question, you said, so what about people that truly want to do right in their heart but still follow the system? Will they be acceptable in Yah's eyes? So it's a great question. Layers to it. First things first, if we're going to be honest, Yah wants us to be in the system but not of it. Being separated doesn't mean that we'll, at least in this time, eventually there'll be a time to where nobody will be on earth except for persons who are in his system, of his system, and about his system. Right? That being said, yeah, there are some who love the world or like to do what's in the world so much that maybe they are, that they're still, they might still have a lot of worldly views, but it's like, they want to do right in their heart, but they still fall into the system. So one of the things I like to talk about in this regard is righteous intent versus being righteous, right? Somebody can have righteous intent and still do this wrong, right? Simeon and Levi didn't like what happened to their sister Dinah, right? You make sure you go through the process of going to our father and having our family speak and all that before you lay down with our sister. You went outside of custom and culture, right? Righteous intent. We're going to defend her. We're going to make a point, right? But did evil, where they took out everybody, right? They literally committed genocide. Righteous intent. Protect our sister at all costs, right? Don't even go to her and do the whole, and even though you can say, well, man, that's what were you doing, but that's not what they did. Hey, you messing with our sister, cool, righteous intent, but you can do wrong, right? Righteous intent. Somebody tries to go ahead and stop the Ark of the Covenant from falling. The law is you shall not touch it. You're trying to stop it from falling, but you're not supposed to touch it. If you shall touch it, you die. That's messed up. He was trying to save the law states. The Most High says any man, right, who touches that. So I want to put, like, there's a lot of persons have righteous intent. Oh man, I want to come by for Passover. All right, make sure you're not coming with the wrong intention, unless you can eat or drink damnation into yourself. Okay, so I want to make it clear that there are a lot of, I'm going to use the worldly term, right? There are a lot of so-called good persons. We hear that a lot, right? There's a lot of good people in the world. Pastor Kofi, are you saying that they're not good, that they're not righteous, that they're not tabah, that they're not nice? There's a lot of nice persons in the world that still don't believe in the kingdom. Or there's a lot of persons in the world who believe in the kingdom, right? But still, because the world they're in, right, what they see physically and what's easy to deal with, they'll go ahead and deal with the world before they deal with in the kingdom. Now, when I say that, when I make that statement, a bold statement, but a righteous statement, right? When I make that statement, here's what I want you to catch off of what I'm saying. All right? When I make that statement, this is what I want you to catch off of what I'm saying. If I can liken it to something, I know somebody's not going to like this, right? It is what it is. I would liken it even to like chattel slavery, right? In that regard. What do I mean? It's not an untrue statement. I'm not trying to do the whole, whatever, if you think that I'm whitewashing history. I'm just being honest about these, but hang in there, right? Hang in there. I see your question, Cheddar. I'll come to that. That's not that difficult for me to answer. Just give me a sec, or a few minutes if you can. I will come to it. I just got to finish this up. Where was I at? I'm sorry. If somebody wants to do right in the system, right? So when somebody's being righteous and somebody wants to do right in the system, here's the deal. I liken it to chattel slavery. Persons are not wrong, even if you think that what I'm saying is supporting the racist. I'm not, but it is what it is. How you doing, Tabitha? Thanks for being on with this. So questions. I'm sorry. So here's the reality. Persons are not wrong to tell you that most white persons did not own slaves. They're not wrong. That's correct. Someone wouldn't be wrong to tell you that a very small percentage of white persons owned slaves because you had to be able to afford them. And especially if you're talking about huge plantations, right? Huge plantations, the way that Jeff Bezos treats you guys on the plantation, the way that they treat you on the plantation in prison, all that stuff. Same way, well, even worse. They treat us way worse. But same mindset as far as having all these people working for you, stuff like that, as far as the percentage. Only a few persons can really afford, right, what it takes to deal in chattel slavery and to own as many slaves as they did. Sure, right, that's true. That being said, even if you were somebody who was an abolitionist, you still had to support chattel slavery to a certain degree. there were some John Browns and persons of that ilk who were willing to come out and be like, no, and flipping over tables like Yahshua did, so to speak. But most persons, including free black persons as well, right? Which there's layers to it. There's layers to the conversation. However, even those who were free, how you doing, Brother Jermaine? Even those who were free still had to do what? Had to be in a society, live with, be right next to sometimes even help support the person who owned the slave. So to live in the system, right, and support the system, even if, right, you have to recognize and realize, even if you don't like what's going on, if you're going to live in that system, you have to support it. I'm sorry, you said there's proof that majority of them did the same way everyone wants a dog can own one today. I mean, if you think that it was like that, that's not necessarily the case, I don't know where we're talking about, what time frame we're talking about. If we're talking about the Caribbean, that definitely wasn't the case, right, where people like Willie Lynch and them came from. If you're talking about Virginia, that definitely wasn't the case, especially if you go into Monticello or going to Mount Vernon and places like that. By the way, those are former presidents' homes, right? George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, also two Virginia slave owners like Jane Polk and Madison and Monroe and Taylor and all these persons, right? But everybody, what I'm saying is ultimately it doesn't matter. It's kind of like saying everybody doesn't have, I don't want to liken this, but that's what they did. They liken us to property, so let's say it like this. Everybody doesn't own a car. Right? And a car is really too much because more persons own cars than own slaves, right? But let's just do it like this. Not everybody owned a car, right? But you don't function in a society unless there's motor vehicles running around. You might not own an automobile, but it doesn't mean that you have not benefited from an automobile, is my point, right? Now, if everybody, so there are some persons that only had 2-3 slaves, and some persons that might have worked a long time for like 5-10 years, finally could get one slave, and at least that was enough to help the family, and they might have treated the slave differently than others did because of, they weren't just, that you couldn't just replace them. Still, it's chattel slavery, right? But long story short, right, and then there's persons who, if you did business with it, if you were a store owner, you're going to have slaves coming on behalf of the master, right? That's how Harriet Tubman in Eastern Shore, how she got jacked up, right? I showed you guys, we went and visited her place, she got jacked up, right? And she got knocked out. How? She was going into the neighbor's house. Or I'm sorry, she was being sent by her slave master, as she would every day, to go to the store and to do something, at the store. All of a sudden, guy's mad at somebody else, at least so the story goes. He throws that big, huge piece of metal, hits her in her head. She gets knocked out. That's how she dealt with narcolepsy for the rest of her life, right? But, she was married to a free black man. But the free black man was married to her, but she didn't become free when she married him. She still was a slave, which meant that he still had to see his wife in and out around slavery. So there was a lot of stuff like that. That's what I'm talking about is that the institution is more dastardly and stuff like that. And if you want to go ahead and exist, and if you want to have a family in it, if you want to have children in it, if you want to eventually get free and maybe have land and do something else, you have to still participate in the system, is my larger point, right? Yeah, I can see you. And how you doing, Chua? You said you're talking about Caribbean and you're the offspring of slave owners. They'll tell you themselves, okay, well, if everybody had one over there, my grandmother, was, Jamaican. My mother's, therefore Jamaican, therefore I am. And then they come by way, even, coming overseas from West Africa and things where we had, believe it or not, dealt with chattel slavery and stuff too, even though it was a lot, it was a little different because they used each other, but hey, to each their own. If you're like, hey, it has to be that, cool. You win. I don't care about being right. I care about being righteous, ultimately. So if you say I'm wrong about that, and every single person had a slave. I mean, especially when you start talking about places like Haiti, Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, Haiti, stuff like that. The reality is that you had Blanc Cajon, right? You had Blanc Petit, right? Parlez-vous français? Right? And so if you have Blanc Cajon, right, the big whites, they didn't even stay over there. They had so much money and everything that they had so many slaves and everything like that. But then you had the little whites, the little ones came over this and that. So if you're trying to say in positions like that, okay, we can kind of get into that. And then you're talking about persons who aren't, but even they have indigent servants, don't necessarily have slaves, but that's why you have overseers things. So we're getting into, like I said, I think more complicated conversation. I'll leave that there though, because that's not my overall point. I appreciate your point. You know, it is what it is. That being said, my main thing is that regardless of all how you look at that, you're looking at, in order for chattel slavery to still exist, everybody in every way has to be able to be on board. If they're not in every way on board, right, in every way, then you have to off the person or off the mindset, or at least seclude it so that it doesn't affect everything, right? Like the mindset that gets Haiti free is what? Is that they were already, you know, they were playing into things, doing tricks, and they thought everybody was with it when they had so-called black persons who were tired of it and like, you know what? You know, it really, they would officially say black person. So if you look at the Haitian, you know, Haitians, when they write their Declaration of Independence, so to speak, and they say that we're free, they say that black is positive. And then also too, though, black can also include German Hessians and things like that, right? So if you're adopted into this group or you fought for this group, then black is important, right? So with them, we can actually not just say so-called black persons, actually nationality-wise, the Haitian is black, right? It's part of their nationality. Black can also mean that you can be grafted in one person's catch-out nationality, where it makes it so much easier to have that conversation. But anyways, but yeah, so you can be somebody who fought for them, right? Or you were black and are Haitian and fought for us. And if you did not, if you fought for the enemy, or if you were so-called white, then that was something that said you had to be kicked off. And that was because everybody who was there had to participate in the system, right? Some were forced to participate, some were not. So if you were somebody who participated in the system and fought willingly to ensure that you tried to take over what now is ours, they say that we kick you out. So I'm saying, in order to get back to this, to the question as far as the kingdom, can somebody say, hey, I love the world, but you know, I'm a great person and this and that? You must comprehend, in order to partake in the system, especially the way that many of us do, you have to say, I'm in it. To be in it, I'm of it. We can be in it. I can go to the store, but I shouldn't be of it, right? I can be in it, but not of it. Right? This is why in a birth certificate it doesn't really matter. You know, all the other stuff they're saying, the main thing on there when you're getting it done, even though you still should make sure somebody teaches you how to do it, right? So I'm not sitting here telling you follow my advice right now, because many of you don't know what I'm talking about, how to do it properly, completely. That being said, part of what you do with your form for the passport is that you put on there that you are not an American citizen. Or I'm sorry, not only that you are not an American citizen, which really is not the big deal, that who you come from are not American citizens. Because if they don't come from it and you don't claim it, then you're a non-citizen national. As long as you can have evidence and proof that you were born here, right? Then what you're saying is that you're just basically saying, I want to be treated like the natural person that you said was lost at sea when I was born, and you came up with that whole birth certificate thing to say that I was birthed, but you couldn't find who was birthed, and so since you couldn't find it, you made me a false person, that LLC, a trust. And you gave me a birth certificate, that birth certificate is worth millions, right? And then you gave me another number that's not even supposed to be used for identification, a social security number, right? So this is why persons who become sovereign, they stop using their social security numbers, they start using their, I'm about to say LLC, that ain't it. Not your ISBN. Well, I'm having a social problem. You stop using your social security card, and you basically use your number that you give them for your taxes. You'll see persons start doing that because you're saying, okay, if I'm doing business with you, I'm doing business in an artificial sense, right? I'm in the system, but I'm not of it. You're not going to do me. You're not going to come to see me. EIN, thank you, your EIN number. That's why persons start using that. They're separating themselves. They're saying, hey, okay, you guys keep trying to make me believe that my social security number is me, and I'm not even supposed to use it for identification. And if anything, it's simply just, my social security number really is connected to a bank, right? It's a routing number. That's what your social security number is. It's a routing number, right? I forget what you add to it, but once you add a number to it, it becomes your routing number. That's all it is. So they're trying to get you to believe that, you know, literally there's this artificial person and that's your equity. and you have zero equity in self. See? So if I'm going to stop participating in the system, I have to go away from it. So same thing with the Most High. If I have to start getting my life in such a place, in such a way, to where I'm separate from the system. Now, I'm not trying to tell you to be lonely. This is why we're supposed to build a nation. The word people means nation anyways, right? So person is singular, persons is plural, people is nation. So we are a peculiar people. We don't fit in. You are a holy nation, a whole people, a people that are one, right? You are a royal priesthood. Royal priesthood in Hebrew and in Greek, both are one word. You can't be royalty without being a priest, and you can't be priestly without being royalty. Right? These terms, they mean stuff. Right? So we have to get those things together and realize, so when somebody's like, oh man, I'm a great person. People do that, persons do that all the time. Man, I don't worry about the Most High. I don't care about that. I just try to be kind to others, according to what standard? Right? We do this weird thing. Morality is morality. It's not our morality. As high as the heavens are the earth, or from the earth, are his ways from our ways, and his thoughts from our thoughts. If we're going to gain his thoughts, they take us separate from the system, from the world. Remember, the word world here is system. The word system and world also refer to the system of who? A system the system is the beast, is the government. So this beast came out of the water, Revelation chapter 12, which is the people, right? That came out of what? The mouth of the Satan. They hang on his every word. And these persons who hang on satanic words have come together as a people, a nation, the children of the devil. Remember, Genesis 3 says the children of the devil are at enmity with the children of the Most High Yah, right? So not everybody who's around you is Yah's child. And we go, well, but that child, he might be satanic, but he's nice when he's satanic. He might be wearing devil horns, and he might have, put some extra skin on his chest so he can look like something else, and he might be out here, having 666 on the palm of his hands and literally written on his forehead, but he's nice. When he shows up, he can be a kind human being, might even be able to say hello back to him, but he's not righteous. And I know somebody says that's an extreme example. I'm using extreme examples because I'm trying to just show you unrighteousness. But when I get lower and lower, we start making excuses. So watch this. Here's where the excuses come in. Oh man, you know what? Oh, I like that pen. Where'd you get that from? Oh, you know what? I took it from work. How you doing, Missy? Is it Missy Tina Turner? Thanks for being on. Right? Oh yeah, I took it from work. It's not a big deal. Oh, okay, it's just a work pen. No problem, man. Shoot, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars, or they have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on that office, whatever, on those office supplies. You straight. But that pen doesn't belong to you, right? Oh no, you making too big a deal on that, Pastor. No, it's we live in a system to where we try to make light work of sin. That's what the system's about, and most of us are geared towards that. So somebody will say, "Well, he's nice." I can't believe. Okay, but the pen is still not yours. Somebody says, "Oh, you being too holy." No, it's holy. That's the standard. How you doing, Brother Cole? The standard is holy, but persons don't like it. So I try to show you guys like the super big one, but then try to show you because in the same manner, there's persons who do stuff like that in the kingdom all the time, right? Yah's word says this, but they don't like his word says this. They don't like it, so they just say, "Well, we'll make up a thing," because this is not original. We'll make up a thing called Old Testament and New Testament. We preach that there's a such thing as Old and New Testament when there's no such thing. We know it's a lie. We know somebody made it up, and you're still going to hear it every Sunday on platforms, pulpits, all over the world of the system, right? Should we continue to do it or not? If it's a lie, should we continue to keep up with the lie? See, we say, read your Bible, it'll bless you. Right? Don't it say in there, Yahavah is the way and the truth and the life, that no man can get to the Father, but by him, he's the truth. So if we know that it's the truth, then why would we abandon it? See, that's the thought process. See, we make light, just like the pen. That's just a small thing. You know what, hey man, I celebrate Christmas and I'll even give y'all. It's not even, there's no way he could have even been born. Matter of fact, the Bible points to where he would have been born, or when he would have been born. No problem, but you know, I've heard pastors, and some of y'all that came and told me the same thing. I've heard pastors be like, yeah, you know, but my wife likes Christmas, so we do it. Or, you know, like the church, the ladies, they've been doing this, and they had a little Christmas stuff, and they have a gala, so is it right or is it not? And I'm going to tell you, like, some of the stuff you're going to see, we're going to be helping communities and things like that, and some of them, they still are lost a little bit in that songs. And while we're going to help them a little bit, you know, we can't help them as much as in certain areas like that as I would like to, because it's not of Yah. So we'll give you something to help persons with. We're not going to do a whole thing where we probably won't promote like your Christmas celebration. But if you're helping children that need help and we're led to help them, we'll help them. But we're not going to do certain things. This is because it's not Yah's will. But see, we the same way we look at like, oh, it's just a company pen. Oh, it's just a roll of toilet paper, or you know, it's just a roll of toilet tissue. Who cares? They want you to use it anyway, right? But I'm just saying the same way. It's we don't realize, once again, it's a sovereignty, Bible, kingdom. It's a lifestyle. If you do it with the toilet tissue, you do it with the word. And somebody says, no, that don't make sense. I promise you. Like, for example, you guys be like, oh, man, people that make more money, they talk. No. You think that people that make more money, then you think that millionaires, some do, by the way, right? So they're not on all. The shoe fits weird if it doesn't take it off. But do you think that all millionaires are giving you 10% of everything they make? Or to their church or whatever? Statistics show that the more money they make, the less they give. Statistics show that for a lot of persons, believe it or not, the more money they make, the less percentage they'll give to their wife or their husband, or whatever. Right? This is systemic. There's some persons who make it and they're rich and they still live in paycheck to paycheck. I've never taught that money is not real and you use it to get real things, and if you get real things, you can have something called passive income where you never have to lift your hands, but money is continuing to come into you. That's sovereignty in a nutshell. That's kingdom living in a nutshell. That's doing what Yah said with the talents that he gave you. A lot of persons don't even know when he said one man had 5 talents. 5 talents was 1,000 pounds of gold. When he said one man had 2 talents, 2 talents was 400 pounds of gold. Well, one man had 1 talent, he had 200 pounds of gold. That's financial literacy. He says, I taught y'all what to do with it. Do what I told you to do with it. 2 of them did what they did and doubled up. 1 of them got scared that he might lose some money, and so he tried to put it in a savings account. He tried to bury it in the ground rather than make sure he got interest or invested it the way he was taught. Next thing you know, his money was taken from him, wicked and slothful servant. Hey, the first one, I said, hey man, you proved yourself. Go ahead, do what you do. Go on your land and do what I taught you. Second one, hey man, you did what I told you. You faithful. Go ahead and do what you do. You were faithful over a few things, because 1,000 pounds of gold to the master was nothing. You were faithful over a few things. Make him rule over many. But for this person who only had 200 pounds and wouldn't even at least make sure he got some interest off, but take that from him and give it to somebody that I know will do something with it. You know, so it's a different. It's a different thought process. You know, that our goal, once again, when we talk about privacy, we're trying to become private enough to then make sure that we become the kingdom we're supposed to be, right? A holy nation. And that's one of the missing ingredients to a lot of these conversations that we're having. Am I? So hopefully I answered the last question correctly. I'm being honest with you, I kind of forgot what the question that led us down there was, but I think we got it. Holy Spirit said we got it. So prayerfully we did. If for some reason I didn't, please feel free to let me know. But today's Q&A, hopefully if you have questions, comments, concerns on any of the platforms that you're on today, first of all, thank you for joining us on the platform. Secondly, if you don't mind, please, man, please, sir, just trying your best. We don't mind questions. We love them. We want to make sure the persons actually get a chance to ask questions that they normally wouldn't. And we try to give answers that have a certain value system. We're in the kingdom. We're which means we're in the kingdom of heaven. So we are doing our best to make sure that we can answer as many questions, comments, concerns as possible. Hopefully everybody can see and hear me still on the multiple platforms. We appreciate you. We probably have like another hour or so. But we go a little bit longer for Q&A sessions, so we might have like another hour and 15 or so, hour 15, hour 30 left. So feel free to go ahead and ask whatever questions you like. I will do my best. I do not opine, so if you're looking for my opinion, I'm going to tell you if I actually am giving an opinion, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fact or contextual fact that brings about truth. And we will be going through the prism of the kingdom of heaven, right? The origins of it, and not what it's become. So just to let that be known. I have not heard of that theory. I'll try to look it up real quick, though. You said it's called the theory of the little season? I don't know if we'll be able to find it. Let me see. You never know. Okay, Revelation chapter 20, verse 3. I did not know this. Let's see. The theory of little season is an eschatological, which just means it's a theory that is talking about the last days. So it's an eschatological interpretation within some Christian circles. Primarily rooted in the book of Revelation, the theory refers to a period after the millennium, a 1,000-year reign, when the Satan is released for a little while or a little season to deceive the nations one last time before the final judgment. The specific interpretations of this little season differ, and some versions are associated with fringe or conspiracy theories. Let's see. So this is what it says here as far as the origin. So you tell me if I'm in the ballpark, Sister Tia, okay? It says, the concept of the little season is based on Revelation 20, verse 3 and verses 7 through 8, which we'll read as well. But this passage describes an angel chaining the Satan. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I already knew. All right, anyways, I'm sorry. Chaining the Satan in the pit for 1,000 years. After that, he must be released for a little while. And at the end of the 1,000 years, the Satan is released and will go out to deceive the nations, which are the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for a battle. The final rebellion is swiftly defeated. Fire came down from heaven and devoured them, and the devil is cast into the lake of fire for eternal punishment. As a matter of fact, even, not only that, it's not just eternal punishment at that point. He was in hell. He's cast into the lake of fire. Anything that's cast into the lake of fire doesn't exist anymore, really. So it's not even, so in eternity, hell exists, right? But, and people do eternal damnation, which I'm gonna just look this up real quick before I say something. Because a lot of people don't know now, obviously, in eternity, something can feel like it's, it literally is forever. But, yeah, so eternal damnation only appears once in the Bible, and it's not an actual term that Israelites would use. So, and it's more of a Greco-Roman term with persons believing about eternal damnation coming from the point of view of those who are Visigothic and those who are Gullic, those who are Franc, those who are Roman, Romantic, Greco-Roman, etc. The idea of a place where souls go. And for a lot of them, the souls aren't even damned, but they can't have souls that are damned or punished for eternity. I don't want to be too graphic, but if you know Greek literature, Roman literature, you in their theos or their theology, right? Their mythos, their mythology, you'll comprehend. You know that there's stories of people who get literally eaten by birds, and then their stuff grows back so they can be tortured daily and stuff. That's not necessarily, the Bible does say that somebody burns in hell. But as far as a place as hell itself, matter of fact, let's do this. Let's just read. I'm going to go to Revelation 22. Revelation chapter 20. And then we'll go back to the beginning because we need to read verses 3 through 8 at least. But I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 20 first. Okay? I want to show you something. And this is one of those things that a lot of persons get upset when you talk about, but it's the truth. So let us be truthful. And thank you for joining this Q&A today and tomorrow in our Holy Day season, in our Holy Day series. So thank you for joining us for the Q&A session on September 25th. We appreciate you. No, I didn't say Israelites don't believe in hell. As a matter of fact, I said that, first of all, hell is not even the way you would say it, right? Hell comes from Hela. If you're dealing with Hela actually was somebody who was down there to watch over souls. And in hell, where Hela was, Hela is where it was frozen. That's where you get this term, where hell freezes over, right? If you're talking about Hades, which some people's Bibles say Hades and stuff, once again, that's somebody else's culture. And Hades is obviously part of the Greek pantheon of deists or deities, of what you guys who are still speaking Germanic language and not actually what the Romans and Greeks spoke, you call them gods, right? But Hades is a so-called god, and he was put down there. Matter of fact, he was put down there by his brother, but he wasn't tricked. It wasn't a bad place for him to be, and he also would overlook, things that were going on with souls, but he actually lived down in the underworld, and he did not torment anybody. But some of the tormenting comes from other cultures. Now, yes, the Bible, once again, as I just said, literally people burn in hell, right? But what I'm saying is it can be explained if we also do what I said we're going to do, which is we're going to read some of Revelation chapter 20 and let it speak for itself. How you doing, one and only Wakanda? How you doing, Sister May? Yeah. So we believe in hell, but I want to show you something. And I'm not going to say everybody agrees with this. I'm just going to show you what the Bible says, and you do with that what you will. Okay? So I'm going to go to verse... trying to find something specific, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. So this is where I'm saying, as far as hell and the lake of fire, right, are two different places. That's my point. So we'll go to the end. So I'm going to start before, actually a little bit too. We're going to go to Revelation chapter 20. Let's start at verse 11. If you're able to turn there with us, or just pay attention. How you doing, Rafael? How you doing? Welcome. Shalom to everybody. No sound? Uh-oh. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Mic check, 1, 2. Can everybody hear me? Yes, no, maybe so. Somebody just said no sound. Did I lose you? You can? Okay. All right. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe Bluetooth or something. Clear? Okay, alrighty. So we said we're going to Revelation chapter 20. We're going to start down towards the bottom, then we're going to make our way back up. All right, Revelation chapter 20 and verse 11. I'm sorry, Cheddar. What was it you asked? I'm supposed to come to you next. My fault, brother. Revelation 20. What did you say? Yours wasn't that. Oh, the Ankh. Is the Ankh a bad thing? So the Ankh, A-N-K-H, long story short, is actually like kind of a cursive version of the Tav. Not even kind of, it is. If you look up the Ankh actually existed in Cush before Kemet, right? And it was a symbol that now has taken on many different legs, including, it's female at the top and masculine at the bottom, which, by the way, cool, that is making an idol. Now, there are certain persons in Kemet, and maybe in Cush, you can be argued later on, but in Kemet, where they started saying that all these Netchers, who is the proper name for what people call so-called Egyptian or Kemetic gods, but the Netchers were started to be depicted in hieroglyphics as persons using this for certain worship and all this stuff or whatever. The reality of the matter, is that it's a symbol to be used to, in part of the language, as a character. So the Ankh was never intended to be used for worship or to worship. So those who are using the Ankh for that, be careful about idol worship, right? It's like if, it's not quite apples to apples, but if somebody were to start worshiping the glass instead of the creator of the glass, then it becomes a problem, right? But the Ankh in its origin, even if you talk to somebody who's Cushitic, if you run into somebody Ethiopian, sometimes even Eritrean, and you're wearing one, or they see one, they'll say, that's ours. Talking about their culture, all right? Remember, Cush is the big brother of Kemet, not just only biblically, but even those of you who don't believe in the Bible. If you do your research, you have to admit Cush came first, and then Kemet came, and then Kemet actually changed some of the stuff that was Cushitic and said they came up with it. But Cushitic persons had the Ankh way before it. Cushitic persons also, if you study somebody like Zipporah, Moses' wife, you discover she she herself had to teach Moses some things about the faith, meaning that obviously there were other persons besides these Israelites who believed in the Most High Yah, and therefore became part of the family spiritually, grafted in, etc. That's not a new thing that persons who are not Israelites can still worship the Most High and still be loved and still be honored and still be protected and still be married and grafted and all those different things. Right? So yeah, basically a cursive version of the top. We're not, it's just another version, but it's, and how you doing, Mark? Thanks for being part of the community. So that one, I apologize, I didn't mean to skip over your question, thank you again. But back to Sister Tia's question, right, with the whole thing. And if you're not, I wasn't familiar with the name of it, but I get it now. I didn't know that it had a specific name. But what was it called again? We're looking at something called I'm sorry, Sister Tia. I thought I still had it up on the screen. The little season, a little season, right? Talking about the 1,000-year reign, and really even the 1,000-year reign, depending on who you listen to, from what I read, it seems to be kind of whacked out a little bit, because it seems like, when you see a person speaking on it, what seems to be happening is they're saying too that the Satan is deceiving people during the 1,000 years, which doesn't make sense even in Revelation, right? Because he's released after the 1,000 years. So that part, I'd have to see who's saying what, because according to this, first thing that popped up was, when I did a search, when I did a quick Google search, the first thing that popped up was, oh yeah, they say that the Satan and stuff, and during the 1,000 years in the little season, but then some others seem to be saying, which is what the Bible says, that I guess once the 1,000 years is up, then that's the little season. So I'd have to see who's saying what, in all honesty, but I believe in touching this, we'll be able to at least give some insight. And if I need to go deeper, maybe tomorrow, or even later today, Sister Tia, let me know. But let's start here. We're going to go back. We're going to end up reading all of Revelation chapter 20. Holy Spirit wants us to start at verse 11, though. All right? So let's go to verse 11. Tedah Barak. Okay. Thanks for the blessing, brother. All right. So Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. And I saw a great bright throne. This word white here would have been bright. Okay, the same throne that we're dealing with in Revelation chapter 4. And him that sat on it, from whose face, Aratz, At-Shemayim, whose face the earth and heaven fled away from. So his face is something that the earth and heaven, by the way, this is not the new earth and new heaven, right? This is the old earth and old heaven. When Yah's face finally shows up, when we shall see his face, former things will have passed away, okay? So earth and heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. They got to be gotten rid of, so that a new heaven and a new earth can come together. Remember, the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of earth, when they come together and meet, if they are proper, the kingdom of earth that's under the kingdom of heaven, they come together in Isaiah 65, then this is a new heaven and new earth. The former things have passed away, behold, all things have become new. Right? And if we keep on going to Revelation 21 and 22, we will see that heaven comes down and meets earth, right? Okay, so Revelation 20, verse 11, and I saw the great white throne and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. Verse 12, and I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Elohim, and the books were opened. And the books, what does the word books there mean? How you doing, David Jones? Thanks for being on with us. And thanks for sharing the live. Thank you, anybody who's on all the different platforms. We appreciate you. It's important that we catch this. This is why, etymology and different things that we talk about, they have to surface. They must surface. We must be honest about what these things mean. This is why a lot of us are missing the meaning behind so much stuff that's so rich in the word of Yahavah. Like, there's so much stuff, so much richness that we have access to, but we don't comprehend what these words originally meant, right? There we go. Praise Yah. That's a huge, important part of what we're going to talk about today, right? It's important that you catch that. Right? I need you to recognize these things, right? When you're talking about Sorry, excuse me. Okay, so when we're talking about these scrolls, right? So when it says in Revelation chapter 20, verse 12, He says, I saw the dead, small and great. That means so I saw those who were passed away. I saw those small and great. I saw those that everybody says are all that and kings and this. And I saw the persons who didn't have as much, right? And they all stood before who? Alachem. And when they were standing before him, what was opened up? The books, or as we've mentioned today, the scrolls. How you doing, Hassan's family? Thanks for being on, everybody. Right? So he saw the scrolls. What scrolls? Right? Important question. But the books were open, the scrolls were open, and another scroll was open, which was a scroll or a book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their what? According to their works. That might be important, since they keep telling us that works don't matter. We might want to figure out what these works mean. Because according to what we just read, those works are powerful. According to what we just read, something about these works. Did anybody else catch that? Is that in your Bible too? I want to make sure, because somebody might be saying, I'm just making this stuff up. But did you see that? Was that in there too for you? That there were these scrolls, these books, and then there was another scroll. So Revelation chapter 20, verse 12 is telling us specifically that, hey, right, we can see very clearly here, right, very clearly here, that we can see very clearly here, according to Revelation chapter 20, verse 12, that there's scrolls that are open, right? And there's angels looking at them, right? And they're looking at these scrolls, and then there's another scroll, right, of life. And the angels are looking through them, and while everybody's before the Father for judgment, no matter how small or great you were, we all had to stand before the Most High. And it says that this scroll is there, right? And they're seeing whose names can go on the scroll, because we got to see what you did. Right? That's clear as day, right? That's clear as the nose on your face, right? So no matter how great or small you were, no matter what your position was, no matter what your color was, everybody got to go to the same place. It's in your Bible too? Okay, I thought so. Right? You said, Khan, everybody that works gets paid. Yeah, we must know the work, what the work is. Right, exactly. So we comprehend that. Okay, I just want to make sure that we put that there, because now that we put that there, and now that we got that going, right? I just want to make sure now that we got that going, praise God. So if we see that your works matter according to the word, right? I mean, maybe somebody's Bible says something different. My Bible, your Bible seem to say the same thing, that your works seem to matter. Okay? And that if you don't have, now you have to have faith. Faith without works is nothing. So that means works without faith is nothing. I'm not saying that your faith is the end all be all, but I'm sorry, your works are the end all be all. But if you have faith in the righteous thing, then your works should be righteous. We should be able to see some kind of manifestation. We should be able to hold you accountable for something. Everybody want to talk. See, this is when it gets really weird. Lil Wayne come on stage, 75 children jumping around, right? But then next thing you know, out of the 75 children, and somehow, some way he's being a great father to all of them, and he says, I give all props to God and all that stuff or whatever. No, first of all, y'all know how I feel about that word, but I'm just saying, no. Something's wrong with your works. You on that lean heavy. Something wrong with your works. How many women you sleeping with a month? A day? Something wrong with your works. I know Lil Wayne spends a lot of time in the studio. I'm just saying, his life shows something different, but we just go, what? Do you, do me. I'm an alien. I'm not a role model anyways. But then you say that everybody in the industry is looking up to you anyway, so obviously you want to be a role model when it suits you. You ever notice that about hip-hop cats, by the way? That's one thing I don't like at all. Don't tell me that your life is not on display and you're not a role model. Meanwhile, though, you say everybody in hip-hop got to go through you and they got to be like you because you're the best. Something don't make sense. Yeah, we got a lot of works to do. I have a lot of works to do. Doesn't mean that's the only thing, right? Yeah, do what thou wilt. Como está mi hermana? Gracias por tu presencia siempre, right? Como está? Hopefully you're doing well. You said stay in cameras? Am I going outside the camera? Too much? Okay. I apologize, man. But yeah, you know, we have all this different stuff that's going on belief-wise, and we don't even necessarily take note of where it comes from. And that is a really big danger, beloved. Like it really, really is a huge, huge danger, beloved. We don't really recognize where stuff comes from. Somebody's been telling you that your works don't matter. Oh, say in the news cameras, okay. I'm not bad, great point, right? So a lot of cats miss that. They're all over the place. Right? I mean, letters basically, well, we can see about that in a second. Because I got to depend on which kind of letter you're talking about. But, you know, and you'll know their fruit, right? You'll know them by the fruit they bear. So watch this. You said, what's the difference between Cush and Kemet? Cush is basically Nubian, or what's now called Nubia. You know, Cush on a map would be more like Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, Central Africa, parts of South Africa, parts of Tanzania, or Tanganyika, if you know the difference, you know, slight difference between the two. You know, that's more Cush. Even going up into places like where Sheba, what actually was, even going stretching up to like what people now call the Middle East. Cushitic Empire is vast. And Kemet, you're talking about the so-called Egyptian dynasty nowadays, right? So Cush came first, and then Kemet came afterwards. And a lot of Kemetics are the same way the Greeks and Arabic persons and stuff would eventually erase, and even French people would come and erase what others did. Cush and Kemet were first, right? I'm sorry, Cush was first, excuse me, the first one, right? But yeah, so a lot of persons miss what we're talking about as far as this in Revelation chapter 20, verse 12. You have to realize that they're saying, you know, your works are on display, right? They were judged according to their works. If your works were not correct, then you didn't get in, period. Or your name wasn't written in the book of life. To have faith in something, but never do what it says, is to have faith and never do the works. It's right there in Revelation 20, verse 12. If somebody's telling you anything different at this point, you have the scripture to just tell them how you doing righteous thoughts. And thank everybody for sharing the live and being on different platforms today, no matter how you're coming to us. Right? So if somebody out there telling you something against the word, they have to be anti-word. They have to be anti-Christ. Going back even to a question that somebody asked earlier, right? Therefore, they might have righteous intent, but that's not righteous. They might have great intention because somebody told them, hey, don't worry about these things because of grace and grace alone. That's what gets you in, right? And nobody deserves anything. Nobody's judged by anything other than by the blood of the Lamb, right? But that's not the case. When Revelation chapter 20, verse 12 says, if your works are messed up, you see that, right? If your works are out of pocket, what do you truly have faith in? Right? Or if you have faith in something but never do what you supposed to, right? Let's do it like that. If you have faith in something and never do what you say you have faith in, do you really have faith in it? Right? If you say you have faith, I have faith in Yah, but then I never do anything that Yah says, do I really have faith? Because if I had faith, I'd do it. But so what are the works we are supposed to be doing? Right, exactly. And that's what is said to us in the law and in our Bible, right? We're not, right? You know, if the Bible says, don't be like, you know, here we go with the Christmas thing again. But if the Bible says, don't be afraid of the changing of seasons. Don't go into the woods. Don't chop down a tree. Don't pay the axeman to go ahead and chop it down for you. Don't drag it into your house. Don't stand it up with nails, so it stands straight up. Don't paint it silver and gold. And we do all those things. And we make an idol out of the tree. Right? The person might be nice and mean well, but they might not know what they're talking about. Right? And so that person is doing works against what the word says. Right? Now, especially now, there are some persons who are what we use the term ignorant. There's some persons who you might determine to be like they just have no clue. But there are others where clearly it says it, and they say, well, because I want to do it, or I feel like doing it, or a family member does it, right? They end up trying to do this, and they end up messing up, right? And Yah's holding them accountable. He holds us accountable when we know the truth. He says, so Christians and Israelites are similar? Yeah, I mean, you would say that there's similarities. I think that, you know, persons who believe or followers of the way can have similarities with anybody. Can have similarities with Buddhists. You can have similarities with demon worshipers. Doesn't mean that, you know, just because some things could be similar doesn't mean that we have the same end point in the same direction, right? First of all these persons that we're mentioning that I just mentioned are human beings. But the similarities, right, doesn't mean that the human beings are going to do the same thing or believe the same thing or walk in the same thing. And is it all things Talayach? I'm not sure how to you pronounce it. Welcome more. Oh, all things T. Aliyah? I'm not even sure. I apologize. I'm messing it up. Right? So, that's right. Thank you. Romans chapter 3, verse 31. Do we then make the law through faith? Yahavah forbid. Or do we make void the law through faith? Yahavah forbid. Yea, we establish the law. We reestablish, even in our case, the law, but we establish the law. That's Paul in Romans 3:31. Paul gets a really bad rap because Christians and followers of the way use him to either be for their purpose by saying he's wrong or saying he's completely right, but saying it through their person, but not actually listen to what he says. Paul also says right before that in Romans chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, he said, is there an advantage to being Yahavah or Yehudi, Judah, Yahavah, and is there an advantage to being circumcised, which means to follow the law? And he says, yes, much in every way, because we had the laws and the scrolls of our fathers and the prophets. So persons who try to say Paul wouldn't be about the law is something that's actually not true. Right? So in all these different things, you know, the law is important. Paul says in Romans chapter 7, if there was no law to say that you shouldn't covet, then he wouldn't know not to lust, because coveting, what causes one to lust? To want something that's not even yours. It's lust. To try to do something with somebody or something that's not for you to do it is lust. He says that in Romans 7. All right, Paul talks about law quite a bit, just like our Messiah, just like Yahavah. They talk about it quite a bit. We like to take them out of character or out of context, and therefore take them out of character. Right? But back to Revelation. Let's stay focused. Revelation chapter 20. So, Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. New heaven, new earth is coming. And now we're seeing in verse 12, persons are lined up to see if they qualify for this new heaven and new earth. And what are we using to see if they're qualified? The scrolls that are opened. They're going through them, and they're looking to see if the persons follow what's in the scrolls. If so, their name will appear in the scroll of life. And how are they being judged, just in case you didn't think of, you couldn't catch it? The dead, both small and great, who are standing before Elohim while these scrolls are open, they're being judged specifically according to their works as it was written in the scrolls. If anybody wants to change that up, you got to realize that's Antichrist. Right? Because according to Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, this is not your revelation. It's not my revelation. It's not even Israel's revelation. It is the revelation of Yahavah given to him of Elohim. When you get to verse 3, you will discover that we can only be fellow heirs to it if we observe and do, just like it says in Deuteronomy 28, we must observe and do what it says. So Revelation 20 verse 11 tells us that all of us have to realize that heaven and earth will pass away. When the face of the Most High is revealed, everybody will come before his face. My uncle used to say it like this. He used to say, everybody going to go before the judgment throne. Everybody going to go to heaven, just not everybody going to stay. And what he meant by that was everybody's going to get to see the Most High. And he's going to look you in your eye. And he's going to begin to see, as we were told, if we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged. Did he judge himself by the word here on earth? Because I'm using the same scroll, the same word, to see if he judged himself by that on earth. Because if he did, that's what I'm judging him by here. This is why Luke chapter 6 verse 37 says, judge the way you want to be judged, forgive the way you want to be forgiven, condemn the way you want to be condemned. Verse 38, and behind it says, whatever you do in that, judging, condemning, and forgiving, whatever you give, it shall be given unto thee. But this time, who? Elohim's measure. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. But while you're on earth, same thought process. While you're on earth, he'll use men to give it to you, to put it given to your bosom. For with the same measure that you meet shall it be given unto thee. If that's his measurement system of what he measures out, right, in abundance, more than what you could ever even imagine, well, and guess what? Now, when you get before him, it's judgment time again. What you gonna do? You said the followers of Christ didn't call themselves Christians, but yeah, for sure. Yeah, right. So we have to establish the law. That's what we're here to do. Verse 13. And the sea, watch this, and the sea gave up the dead which were in it. So we've had description. We've had persons so far coming before. So new heaven, new earth is created. Everything else that was before, right, had to flee his face. We haven't seen new heaven and new earth described as of yet, but we see a line going where who's going to get in, who's not. They have to be judged according to their works by the scrolls or by the so-called Bible. Verse 13, and the sea gave up the dead which were in it. So if you were in the ocean, if you're in the waters, right? If you're in the water, right? In the water, you still have to, what? You still have to, you're gonna be dealt with. And watch this. Here's another point. Going back to what I was saying earlier. And death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And death and hell. So those who were dead, who were asleep, right? Because for all of us it'll be like we're asleep, at least if we're going to heaven, we sleep when we open our eyes. But then it says, and even hell. Right? So death and Sheol. Did you catch that? So those that are dead, and those that are even in hell. This is where I've talked about this before, and people look at me really dumbfounded. If you're hearing this for the first time, a lot of persons are like, this dude done lost his mind. But I'm trying to show you what your Bible says, right? The Bible, David says this. He says, even if I were to go to hell, you are there with me. Would you believe that there's persons who are in hell that are going to be judged a second time, and some of them still are going to do everything in their power to tell you and I, right, that they don't want to bow down to the Most High? Did you know that? So where they can get out of hell, even if they deserved it. It says death and hell gave up. Did anybody in the Bible say anything different? We've read Revelation chapter 20, verses 11 through 13 so far. We didn't even finish verse 13 yet. And we've seen that no matter where you are, no matter how great or small you are in stature, right, you're going to be judged off of the works, right? You're going to be judged according to the same works that are the same scrolls that you have right now. So you can have another scroll that's being written in heaven right now called the Scroll of Life. And verse 13, and the sea gave up the dead which were in it. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it. So those in the water. And then death had to give up what was there, right? So the graves had to open up. And then even Sheol, or hell, had to give up who was in there. So even if somebody's in hell, you know that Yahavah is a sea. We're talking about eternity. The same Yahavah who's on the top in eternity right now is also the same Yahavah in eternity who's in hell. Who's also the same Yahavah in eternity who's at the right hand of the Father. And he's in hell. Right? Before he comes up with all power in his hand in eternity. He's in hell right now in eternity. Right? Trying to tell persons get it together. Matter of fact, in time, nobody's in hell yet. Because the Satan is the first one who's going to crack it open. According to Revelation 20. We're going to go back up to that in a second. After he goes, then people go in there. But we're talking about what's happened after the 1,000 years, after the Satan's been released, after the Satan is thrown into the lake of fire. But I want you to catch this. Right? So verse 13. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to what? How you doing, Brother Dennis? And if Sister Angela's watching, I hope I have that right, sis. And the family that came out with you, right? All right, here is, beloved. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to what? According to what? Anybody got it in your book? They were judged according to what? We're in Revelation chapter 20, verse 13. The sea gave up the dead, the grave gave up the dead, hell gave up the dead, right? They got in line too. After all those persons that we saw of stature, they were in line too, with those persons who were small and great. Even those who were in hell are in line. And now what's going to happen? Every man is judged according, thank you, Elder Tanner. Thank you, Brother Dwayne. Right, thank you, everybody who's on here. I apologize. And we're just talking about this, praise God. Right? Thank you, everybody who's being on. Y'all ready? Watch this. They're judged according to their works. I don't know how much more we can say or do this, beloved. Some of these persons done lost their mind. They try to tell you and I that your works don't matter. Seems like they done lost their mind. Because we keep finding scripture that keeps saying, in Revelation, so-called New Testament, keep saying that they are righteous. I'm sorry, that they must be righteous as far as their works. We're seeing it over and over and over again. Aleph up top, come on, from birth to death, from the beginning to the end. And the beginning and the end is the one who's speaking here, according to Revelation chapter 1. All right, let's go on to the next verse. See, so all you got to do, you can go to Revelation chapter 20, start at verse 11, and then ask these persons to explain to you who are saying this stuff. Ask them where they're getting this from, because the Messiah, this is his revelation, and it's for those of us who follow him, who will be fellow heirs, therefore it becomes our revelation, what we rejoice in through the things that are revealed to us. Then you need to ask them where they're getting this stuff from. Sister Tia, we still haven't answered the question exactly, but we're going to go back up top in a second. We're in Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. We just read Revelation chapter 20, we just read verses 11 through 13. Here's verse 14. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. Okay? So hell is a real place. I didn't say hell wasn't a real place. I'm talking about what your Bible says, what the Tanakh says, what the guide says, what the scroll says, what the cultural context of hell is. We're trying to do it through the prism and through the lens of all the stuff we saw on television and we read in books or that Greco-Roman philosophers and stuff wrote out for us, and it's not even what's in the Word. Excuse me. Right? Death and hell are looked at differently. And at some point, see, death was created. Remember, why was death created? Let's go over death and hell real quick, a couple points, right? And thank you, Sister Tia, for this question, right? In-depth question that's now taking us to other questions. I love it when it happens like this. That's why we do 2 days in a row of Q&A, because it gets serious. Some of these things, right? So, the question for you, if you have, right? So what was the purpose of death? And some of you have been with us long enough, you already know where I'm headed, so feel free to go ahead and chime in. And is it, I don't know if it's Chaskabal, right? I'm not sure, but thank you for being on with us. Appreciate you. What was the point of death? Yahavah did create death, but remember, death had no power until what? Death was created before Adam and Eve, or so-called Adam and Eve, actually known as Adam and Ayazar, but so-called Adam and Eve. Before they sinned, death existed, but it had no power. What was the only thing that could give power to death? Right? When we get to the point where it says, oh grave, where is your sting? Right? That's talking about, we're getting back to the origin. When man gave death power, right? Which is when we sinned. How you doing worldwide? Right? Transgression of the law. Do not eat of that tree. On the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. Death existed already, but it has no power. It can't deal with you. You can't deal with this death until this death won't really affect you, right? Unless you eat of the tree. You eat of not. There's two. You can eat of any tree, including the tree of life, right? But you can't eat of the tree of so-called tree, the knowledge of good and so-called good and evil. Once you do that, you're saying that you are on the same level as the Most High. If you're on the same level as the Most High, you don't need His covering, which is why a sacrifice is given after the fact. Why? Because you need to be covered. You were naked without the presence of the Most High. When you lost His presence, you lost your covering. When you lost your covering, you became naked. Right? You lost your covering, you became naked. You lost Holy Spirit, you became naked. You lost the will of Yahweh, you became naked. Right? Everybody with me on that? Right? You became naked. Okay, so you became naked in these things. You became uncovered. And through sacrifice, right? The sacrifice is given, right? An offering is given up. Yahavah gives the offering up to himself and teaches you how to do this. Every time you sin, our offering must go up. That's why Yahavah comes. He's the second Adam. He's also known as the second Yahavah, the second Joshua. Joshua, son of Nun, is able to take the law and take us into the promised land. And he was the understudy of Moses. Moses decided all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he had a bad moment. But it was a crucial moment where he basically said that he was the one that freed everybody up, right? Idolizing himself in the moment because of his anger, once again, frustrated, and now all of a sudden he can't go into the land of Canaan, right? Even though he does make it into heaven, but he can't get into the land of Canaan. He can't make it into the land of Canaan. Now you have Joshua leads us in. Well, guess what? The same name, Joshua or Yeshua, Yahashua, right, is the name of the Messiah. One is Yahashua Barat Navan, one is Yahashua Barat Yahavah, or Yahashua Barat Yahazav, right? And so now we get ready to go into, and now we can have a conversation with what's going on as far as also to him now dealing, or Yahashua telling us about this thing called the second death, right? But the Satan is already thrown into the lake of fire. He came out of hell earlier. We're going to get to that in a second. But he was already thrown into the lake of fire, right? Here it says, right, let's go back to this real quick. Revelation chapter 20, verse 14. Death, that only was given power because of sin, but now through Yahushua, he's come that we might have life and more abundantly, right? So death won't exist anymore, and death itself is thrown into the lake of fire. What's the second one that's thrown into the lake of fire? Right? And hell. Hell is thrown, Sheol, is thrown into the lake of fire. So hell, which holds the devil, and then later on holds those who follow the devil, right? Once the devil is released and he's thrown into the lake of fire, right? Also, those who are in hell can be released to see if they got themselves together. For once again, it's not Yahavah's will that any would perish, but all would have everlasting life. Those who still want to be followers of the devil, though, or want to be separate from the Most High, whatever the case is, the lake of fire will be thrown into there as well. I'm sorry, hell will be thrown into the lake of fire. So this is the second death. Right? Your first death, right? Even if you end up in hell, okay, but Yah loves us so much that his remember who he is, his grace extends even to hell. As the preachers used to say back in the day, right? I'm so glad that Yahavah, that the Messiah, that Christ, that Mary's little baby boy, that he went down, and he went down the hill, and he started beating everything until he had it in the palm of his hand. Right, you heard say that before? And he came up with all power. I said he came up with all power. Right? Y'all know that? Right? So, but that's what they're talking about, that he has all power. Remember, who's in charge of hell? This is another messed up part. This is another messed up part. Who is in charge of hell? See, a lot of you are into books and all the other stuff, right? So you probably would be like, oh yeah, Satan's in charge of hell. No, not according to the Bible. There's a person who's watching over hell right now, an angel who watches over hell, Abaddon. And he, on behalf of Abba, when Abba gives a signal, will say, open the gates up, and the first person to be thrown in there will be the Satan, bound with something stuck on his forehead to ensure that he cannot move. And he will be there for the 1,000 years. And then those that want to be like him, they can follow him there too. But eventually, that's right, they used to say he got the keys, right? He got the keys. Well, if he got the keys, he's got the authority, right? And Abaddon had the keys. He's been given the keys by the Father, right? And the Father, when he says so, will tell Abaddon, open it up. And then that's when persons will be put in hell, so-called hell, right? Okay, so that's the second death. But even hell will be thrown into the lake of fire. So death and hell, while everything is in eternity, and yes, there isn't, but you got to understand, there's only one place, at least in the King James Version, which is, going back to your original, right? There's only one place in the Bible that actually uses a term called eternal damnation. But that's more so thinking about eternal damnation from somebody's perspective. Hell is very real, and the suffering is there. At the same time, the Most High Yah is, at some point, just going to be like, all of that's going to be thrown into the lake of fire. It will be done away with. Death is something that he created because of sin. If you were in a sinful state because you ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil and stayed in that state for the rest of your life, you would be eternally damned on the earth, always feeling pain, getting worse, living eternally with no stop to the pain and anguish of all these things. And so death is actually, forgive me, I'm not trying to be like too Kevorkian-esque, but death is almost, not even almost, death is a reprieve from the consequences of sin. Right? Death was not to your soul or to your spirit. That's why your soul and spirit need to be salvaged, and your body as much as it can be. But your soul and spirit go through working out your own salvation. Right? Your body will eventually die, and your soul and spirit, which are attached to your body, will go to be absent from the body as to be present with Yahavah. So you'll be asleep, and when you open your eyes, you'll be in that line, Revelation chapter 20, right? I'm sorry, you'll see that there's the old former things that passed away, Revelation 20:11. And you'll be in that line, and you'll be seeing the person being judged by their works. Revelation chapter 20, verse 12. And you'll see that even those who are dead already, and those that are in the grave, and those that are in hell, even will get a second opportunity. Prayerfully, they got their minds together. Because this time, when you go, there is no hell. Hell is real, but this time, when there's after the second death, there's no hell. See, we look at it through somebody else's. The hell is cast into the lake of fire. Death is cast into the lake of fire. Verse 15, Revelation chapter 20, verse 15. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast not into hell this time, cast into what? The lake of fire. Right? So the lake of fire is not hell. Remember, hell was cast into the lake of fire. Hell is a real place where persons are. But then the person's in hell, they got to be judged a second time. There's a second death. This time, there's no coming back. This time, see, hell is an opportunity for you to get that ultimate whooping. It's eternal. It feels like it's forever, right? It feels like it's forever and ever and ever. It does. Right? And by the way, the word lake of fire, that's like a poetic way of saying it. Technically, the word they're using there, which I think is pyre or pyre. Pyre or pyre, I think it's pyre. But you know where they get this term pyros from? Pyrotechnics, all those things. Right? right? So you got to realize that hell, when it talks about it being hot, it's talking about because you in the lake of fire, and at this point, when you're in the lake of fire, there's no coming out. There's no comeback. You have an opportunity. Now remember, the Satan, when he goes to hell earlier, let's go back to the beginning of Revelation chapter 20. Let's start at verse 1. We're going to focus on verses 3 through 8 because that's where the so-called question came from as far as the little season or the small season, whatever that theory is called. But yeah, so if you notice when the Satan is thrown into hell, in Revelation chapter 20 and verse, well, we'll see it in a second, whichever verse it is. When he's thrown into hell, right? Sheol, when he's thrown into hell, you'll see that it doesn't say everything's on fire, boom, 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 whatever. It says that he's locked up and he can't move. Later on, you will discover, right, that, wait a minute, now hell's got fire in it. What happened? Which Brother Dwayne, right, pointed out, right? The reason it's got fire now is because it's in fire. It's not even called the lake of fire. It's literally just called fire. The lake of fire is, I guess, in English version, they're trying to give you their best thought process, but it doesn't even say originally the lake of fire. That's more poetic, right? But I guess they're trying to get you to imagine, you know, all the water back there is just nothing but fire. Which, by the way, goes with what the context is in the dream, in the vision that John the Revelator was having, right? He's saying that he looked out and he saw that there was, basically that he looked out and that he saw that there was, you know, like the water was disappearing and all this stuff. Now all of a sudden there's a bunch of fire, right? So there's a bunch of symbolization going on. If you see, right, in fire, you know, the fire of Yah can even lick up the water of sacrifice. Those of you who know about that part, I'm kind of going to something else there. But long story short, back to what we're talking about and staying committed to that. So, yeah, so hell or Sheol is hot because it gets thrown into the lake of fire. But let's look at this. Back to Revelation chapter 20, verse 1. Here we go. And thank you for hanging in there, Sister Tia. But I wanted to sew that part up because it makes it easier for me to hit this part. So if you're still there, thank you for being there. I appreciate you. Thank you for a great question. It's one of those questions that opened up, you know, a few different things for us to be able to look into, right? All right, let's go. Revelation chapter 20, verse 1. And I saw the messenger, I saw an angel come down from Shemayim, from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit. What did he have? The key of the bottomless pit. This bottomless pit is Sheol, is hell. Okay? He had the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Right? He had a key and a chain. Okay? Now verse 2. And he laid hold on the dragon. Revelation chapter 12. The serpent, the dragon. Right? Genesis chapter 3. The serpent, the dragon, the snake. Okay? All right. Thank you, Sister Tia. Right? So now verse 2. And he laid hold on the dragon, on the Satan, that old serpent, which is the devil, just in case there's any, and the Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. So just in case you didn't recognize who this is talking about, it's very clear. After verse 2, the Most High has power. He has the keys to the bottomless pit, to Sheol, to hell. He gives the key to a specific angel. That angel comes down from heaven. He has the key of the bottomless pit and the chain in his hand. And then, remember, the devil, who, according to the word, was, right, according to Revelation chapter 12, was never released into hell, never had authority over hell, right, was waiting on the day, they're trying to fight against the day he was supposed to go to hell, right? Then the angel comes down, who has authority, snatches up the devil, right, gets him by the collar of his neck, scruff of his neck, and it says, and shut him up. Now, somebody might say that means stop him from talking, right? But more than likely, shut him up. You put him in the bottomless pit. But watch this, and didn't stop there. And set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more. So when we get to the 1,000 years, persons don't recognize that when we get to the 1,000 years, there's going to be whatever. If it's literally 1,000 years, we don't know. If it's going to be a long, huge part where it almost feels like eternity, if we're talking about like a day to Yah's with 1,000 years, or we're talking about 1,000-year reign, etc. But get this, catch this. The Satan will be trapped in the bottomless pit. Okay, everybody caught that? He will be in the bottomless pit for 1,000 years. So this means, and it says that the seed, that there be a seal set upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more. So nobody who is on earth can be deceived by him. Watch this. Nobody on earth can be deceived by him. Nobody who's in the spirit can be deceived by him, right? Nobody who's in hell with him eventually, or those who will follow him in hell, rather. That's a better way to say it, excuse me. Right? None of these persons will be deceived by him. What he's able to do now is through his mark, right? Through that Nero Caesar, Neven Quasad type of mindset. He's able right now to be able to get everybody to be involved in the beast and do all this stuff or whatever, but he's going to be gone, and it's going to and Yah is going to remove the seal, meaning that all these persons who were getting authority and doing all this stuff, the Satan's not going to be the standard. It's going to turn into what Yah wants, right? For 1,000 years should be fulfilled. It will be put into effect. That's what that word fulfilled means. Remember, if you go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, Yahavah says, I came not to destroy, think not I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I came not to destroy, but that things might be what? Fulfilled. Fulfilled, when you look it up, means to be put into effect, to live inside of it, for it to be established, etc., right? So he says, don't think. Right? I'm sorry, so that's Yahavah said, I came to put these things into effect, the law into effect, right? All right, so back to Revelation chapter 20, verse 3, and cast him, right, this angel, this messenger on behalf of the Most High, cast the Satan into the bottomless pit, shut him up in it, and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more, till 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed. Now here's the theory, a little season. So right there, persons who believe that the devil is out here doing all this during 1,000 years and somebody doesn't get it. I know most persons don't, but according to what I read, there seems to be a little bit. So they've automatically been thrown to the side. All right? Now, as far as verse 4 on, here we go with the little season. We don't know how long this little season is. So this is one of those things we don't need to argue about how long it is, blah, blah. We just know there's a season where it's going to be 1,000 years. If that's literal or not, literal yam, literal 24-hour periods in the yam in the period of time, we don't know. But we just know there'll be 1,000 years where Yah will be the standard and the devil will not be around, nor will he even be able, if somehow he can try to find a way to finesse a message out, the authority that lets people be blind to who he really is will be taken down. There will be none of that authority. So we'll have 1,000-year period, whatever that is in actual years, but we'll have a huge long period of time. And then whatever happens less is obviously very, very small in comparison to the 1,000 years, because it calls it a little season. So the 1,000 years of reign, and then all of a sudden it says a little season where the devil is allowed to what? He's allowed to come back out and be loosed. Right? So Yah's going to give not only those, so watch this, and we already went over the end, so you guys are going to see this make a lot more sense now. When we talk about the second death and all those things, there will be a lot of persons who will have a season. Believe it or not, there are going to be some persons who have a season in their life, 1,000 years, right? There are going to be persons who live to where the Most High will be the standard, right? What the devil's taught will be something that dissipates all those things. And persons will have a clean slate, just to make sure, right? For all fair, how fair is that? That Yah says, you know what, I'll even, just to show you that I'm not just being like, oh, I messed this up and I didn't give anybody a chance. I'll even give a chance to where I eradicate the devil and his authority for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years. Right? But then verse 4, and I saw, Revelation chapter 20, verse 4, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls, I saw the Yahavah, I saw the Sakeh, the psychology of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahavah and for the word of Elohim. Same souls that we see in Revelation chapter 6, verse 9, saying, how long? When is it that we're going to get, when is vengeance going to be taken on our behalf? Same ones. All right? And watch this. And which had not worshipped the beast. They didn't worship the system. They were not so patriotic and so right-wing or left-wing or Republican that they couldn't hear the word at all. And we're arguing over foolishness that's not even helping us in humanity at all. Right? They didn't fall for all those things. Right? They didn't worship the government, neither his image. Remember, the image of the beast is a huge thing. When you talk about the image of the beast, that's talking about what the second beast, that Antichrist spirit, holds up. And remember, that Antichrist spirit has the horns of a lamb, right, of a male lamb. So it has the horns of a lamb, meaning it's a sacrificial sheep. So it kind of reminds you of Christ. But if you listen to his voice, it's clearly of the devil. It's clearly of the serpent. So it says here that there are some who were beheaded, remember, for witness. They were beheaded, in other words, beheaded, having the head taken off, somebody getting, you getting in trouble for your mind being of who Yah is. Right? We could say that in how you do Hebrew, God, coach, excuse me. We could say that, right? But we could also say it for the left, the right, any of them, right? They have this thing of, right? And so those of us who are beheaded, who literally people come at our head, right? And try to take our mindset, say that we weren't nothing, blah, blah, or even some of us who literally, gave up our life for Yahavah and for the word of Elohim, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, right? The image is put up by the second beast in Revelation chapter 13, right? Neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads. They didn't get that 603 score and 6 or that 616, right? That certain type of mindset, thought process on the forehead, on the mind, on the brain, right? Or in their hands, right? Not marked at all. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. Those are the persons who lived and reigned with him, right? Those persons will live and reign with him for 1,000 years. There will be 1,000 years of nothing but those who are resurrected. So there's a resurrection already, if you haven't caught that. Right? The idea of the rapture stuff. Don't forget, persons were resurrected by Paul. Persons were resurrected in the so-called Old Testament. Persons were resurrected by Christ. Matter of fact, when Christ's blood hits the ground, persons came out of the grave that night. Right? Don't forget, this thing of no. There's Yah's resurrection power, eternity and time, two different things. I don't have time to go into that part today. Some of you know what I'm talking about, right? When you realize most of us is so stuck in time that we don't realize time is a line through eternity. It hits different. But there's already a group who have reigned 1,000 years. I had to read more about 541. I don't know enough to make a statement about it, but I'm trying to get into that as well. If you have some stuff that you can share with me on it, that would be a big help, because I'm trying to find a place to start. I don't even know where to start with that one, if I'll be honest. But yeah, there are persons who are resurrected. We've had transfiguration that happened in Scripture. We've had persons that have said, I've seen persons, you can say whatever, they tricked you, you just fall in love. I've seen persons where we know that the person got work done on their body, right? Organs pulled, all that stuff, makeup, everything put on the face, sewn up, and somebody come by and put hands on them and come up. I don't have that. I've never had that power been led to. I'm just telling you, I've seen people walk in and be like, in the name of Yahavah, get up. Right? To each their own on that, right? That being said, because some people you wouldn't believe me if I went into that whole thing. I've talked about it before. You believe that still can happen or doesn't. But either way, right? We know that resurrection has already happened. Well, it says here during the 1,000 years, right? That they reign with them. Now, some people even get to a place where they'll say there was 1,000 years where everything was straight, then the devil was loose, and then there was another 1,000 years. It doesn't seem like that to me, but hey, it is what it is. Right? And it says, but during this time, but the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. Now, once again, here's when somebody says, well, what was the difference? What distinguished them? It wasn't that they were better, worse, blah, blah. Here's what it says. It says that those who were there were the ones who reigned with him for 1,000 years, were the ones who were beheaded for the witness of Yahavah and for the word of Elohim, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image. So basically, if you were a martyr, and I don't want to get into the whole thing as far as sainthood, as far as the way we look at it through Christianity, especially through Roman Catholicism, but those who were martyrs, specifically going through things. Now, could we say this, the beheading has to be literal? Not necessarily, right? But these persons obviously went through some stuff that was crucial, and also were willing to be put on display, if you will, even after death, their bodies put on display, stuff like that. You were talking about torture, and those who went through that, there's an extra 1,000 years, they get 1,000 years with Christ in rulership. Okay? Now watch this though, verse 5, but the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished, right? Now, 1,000 years is still going to be a blip if you just going through sleep in eternity. When you wake up, it's going to be as if nothing happened anyways, right? But the rest of the dead, right, live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is what? The first resurrection. The first resurrection. Once they start to get up, and the others have already gotten up, that's the what? The first resurrection. The first resurrection dealing with what? With the first death, right? They don't have to experience the second death. They were already taken care of during the first resurrection, right? You catch that? They've already dealt with what they need. They don't even have to go through. They followed the law. They were obedient, right? And those who didn't necessarily were martyrs, but still they followed the law. They were obedient. So guess what? First resurrection, right? They don't even have to worry about the second death already. They get the first resurrection. So the resurrection we talked about already in Revelation chapter 20, that's dealing with a second resurrection. You see that? So there's a first resurrection that centers around the first 1,000 years, whether they reign with Christ or they come back during the little season, and they don't have to deal with when the Satan is released in the little season. He's put in hell for 1,000 years. While he's in hell, those who were alive, those who were resurrected, those who were in heaven, they deal with being free of the Satan. Right? Right? They deal with being free of the Satan. Verse 6. Barak at Hakodash is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has what? No power. So the second death we just talked about, right? There will be no power. It has no power. Right? Then the lake of fire is going to have hell and death and the devil thrown into. There's no power. So you don't have to worry about that. That's why we say we revel, we rejoice. When other persons are talking about Revelation, this and that, we revel, we rejoice in it. Because we know what's about to happen. Right? We know that we're going to be covered, that we're going to be taken care of, that we're sanctified, that we're a holy nation, that we're set apart. And so when everybody gets scared and starts looking at this as apocalypse, we start looking at this as something to rejoice in. Because why would I be sad if I know that I'm about to be taken care of and that those who are righteous? He's leading us, that's right, to the expected end. See, so that's the first, so those who deal with that, as far as martyrdom and all that, right, that was the first resurrection. But even those, right, so those who have part in that first resurrection, on such the second death, have no power. But they shall be what? Watch this, priests of Elohim, of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. So we're talking about those who were priests and kings with Christ, 1,000 years. That's up to verse 6. Verse 7 now. This is when the Satan is freed. Verse 7. And when the 1,000 years are expired. So the Satan has finished his 1,000 years being set up, and now he shall be loosed for this little season. Verse 7, he was loosed out of his prison. Okay, so this is nobody else's prison, this bottomless pit, all that stuff, and he has no influence. Remember, all that stuff. Now he's going to be loosed for a little season. This means that Yah has allowed everything to be established, whatever, if it's a literal 1,000 years or not, we don't know, but he's allowed his will to be established in the earth realm. You can't blame it this time on the devil. You can't say he was messing with your spirits, because even those that have been resurrected so far, they separated and all that. You can't say that you had no clue about the law, because all the things that took you away from it, that could blind you, etc., they have been taken away. There is nothing that should be able to get into your life on that level to where you're still sinning like that, right? Where you're still missing the mark because of all this. There's nothing. There's nothing. Come on, praise God. There's nothing that should be separating us from the love of Elohim. But there's no demonic stuff. It's not. We're not looking at this. Is not okay. Every time I go to the stores, Halloween candy everywhere. No. This has been Yah's will for 1,000 years. All right. He gave you an opportunity. So some persons will see 1,000 years in the spirit realm, in the earth realm, wherever, right? Angels, etc., will have an opportunity to see nothing but Yah's will done. Right? Verse 8, and shall go out to deceive the nations. Okay. So all these nations were so-called Atzatan free. Right? They were free of the Satan. All the nations, free of them. If you're keeping this up, it's not because the Satan's even around. If you're keeping this up, you have tried to keep this up on the low or try to figure out how to do this and try to go against the will of Yah. But you still have free choice, free will. It's just the thing that's going to be the majority of what you see is no longer under the influence of the Satan. If you're doing stuff that's against Yah's will, that's your personal decision. Now, we can't even blame it. See, so there's some, right? Well, first of all, you can't blame any of it on the Satan because you have free will, right? But there's some, that would go above and beyond with that whole thing of trying to make sure that they get away with doing whatever they want. That's not going to work this time. How you doing, Willie? Thanks for being part of the community. All right, you're going to have all this time. Then he's going to be let loose. And it says he goes to deceive the nations, which are in the four quarters of the earth. Right? In the four quarters of the earth. I want to look at Gog and Magog just briefly. Just briefly, right? There's a lot of different thought process on what this is. Gog and Magog are not a specific person, right? If you know about Gog and Magog, even from the Bible, put it like this. They are, here in the dream, they symbolize those who are against the Most High, right? They were specific countries at one point, based off of specific men at one point. But they're basically here to talk about like those who rebel against the Most High Yah, rebellious spirit, right? This is what Gog and Magog is really telling us about, right? It's also kind of looking at the end of the era. There's scripture that says that Esau is the end of the world, the end of the system, and that Israel is the beginning of everything else, right? This is an opportunity. So when you see anything that reminds us of Gog and Magog, you got a little homework assignment if you like. Figure more out about it. Even if you do some Google searches, you won't get straight up the answer, but you'll get a lot more. Some of you just do some brief study today. I promise you'll probably be able to get even more out of it than what you have. I promise you, that's a nice little rabbit hole to go down if you have time, right? And if you have questions about it tomorrow, bring it up tomorrow for sure. But a little homework assignment for you. But Gog and Magog basically are just representing, what the most, representing those who rebel against the Most High. Okay. So back to verse 8. So the Satan, when he's loose from hell, he will go out to deceive the nations, right, at the four quarters of the earth. Gog and Magog, right, those who rebel, he'll seek out those who have a rebellious spirit to gather them together to battle. There's going to be one last battle this time. They're going to gather them together for battle, right? And as they come together for battle, the number of whom is the sand of the sea. It will seem like it's something that it will not be countable, and it will seem like something that might be insurmountable, right? And Shalom, Sister Barbara, how you doing? If I didn't say so, Brother Alton, how you doing? Right? It will seem like this is insurmountable. Real talk, right? It will seem like it's too much. Verse 9, and they went up to the breadth of the earth, encompassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from Elohim out of heaven and devoured them. Right? So these persons tried to attack the righteous setup that Yahavah had, right? They tried to attack those who were in the kingdom. They tried to attack those that were faithful to the Most High Yah. And fire comes down. And they're done. And the devil that deceived them, he was cast where? This time not in the hell, but into what? The lake of fire and brimstone, which basically just means he was thrown into fire and brimstone. Remember, the lake of fire is a poetic way of saying fire. They just use the term pyr or pyre, P-Y-R, which pyrotechnics, right? Fire. So all this means is he was thrown into fire and brimstone, right? You can heat up certain rocks, or you put certain rocks or certain stones and things like that. Stones, rocks, can continue to keep it the heat, wood, etc., right? So he's thrown into fire and brimstone. Where the beast, watch this, verse 10, who's also going to be thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, right? Who's also going to be thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone? It's going to be the beast, which is the government. Anybody who governs, right, according to the will of the devil, that government must be thrown in. And if you read Revelation before this, you'll discover that there's parts of it where it talks about that person's seat that the government, especially when you talk about the whore of Babylon and stuff, and it says that they eventually get a hold of her and they rip her apart, but it's too late, but they realize what she's done to them when they partook in trying to be married to her falsely, right? Pornography, false image of marriage, sexual activities or perverted activities away from the will of God, not being married to their husband, and then eventually it says they'll rip her apart, but by then it's too late. What's done is done. You're too far gone. You thought there would be promises. There were certain promises you made to her, to this system, to this beast, to this government, and now that you figure it out, it's not what you thought it would be. Now you want to try and rip it apart. Too late. Right? This is why you got to judge yourself. If you would judge yourself by the word, judge yourself by what it says now, you would not be judged. When you get to the point to where you're like, oh man, let's rip this, everybody now. Let's tear this system apart. It's too late. This system is deeply embedded. And this system, so it's just like what happened with Willie Lynch. Willie Lynch said, if we do this right and we teach them how to do this, we won't even have to do it but 1 year. We can get this in 1 year, and they'll do this generation to generation for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But here you are, still taking what the world says, and you know what the world says is wrong. You know what Hollywood is doing is wrong. You know it's wrong to lie, whether you're Republican or Democrat, but guess what? You keep doing the same thing because you're so involved in the system. That's why, like we talked about earlier, when the question was brought up earlier, sovereignty, the mindset of the sovereign is trying to separate you from the world, right? But separate yourself from the beast long enough to make an informed decision. All right. So verse 10, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire, or just in the fire and brimstone, where the beast, and I'm sorry, Brother Dwayne, you had asked me about something. I apologize, I didn't forget about you. If you can put it up on the screen for me in just a second, so we can go back to it. Because there was something you asked, and I was like, yeah, depending on which one. So we'll get to that, I promise. All right, but verse 10, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast, where the government, and the false prophet are. The false prophet, right? You might, right? That second beast that uplifted, even in imagery, he would uplift the government, the beast, and uplift the serpent, the devil, right? Some of you call him Antichrist, or an Antichrist spirit, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. So the torment is not in hell, right? The torment comes from the lake of fire. That's the one you want to avoid, right? We have the first death. That's where I started, where we started. There's the first death and the second death. And I knew as soon as I was saying it, and then with the question that was given, that's why I said great question, because it's taken me so many places. And how you doing, Joe Wayside, excuse me. Feel like a long time to talk to. Hopefully all is well, right? But that's why I was saying I'm going to take my time and go to the end of it, and then let's go back and work our way down, because now this makes more sense prayerfully to you. That there's a first resurrection, there's a second resurrection, there's a first death, and those who are martyrs and those who have been resurrected, at the end of the 1,000 years, right? They won't have to experience the second death or even be influenced by it, because they won't be around during this so-called little season, right? The little season. They won't be around. They won't be affected by it. They won't have to worry about that. But those who are, you got to be aware of what's going to happen, and you got to be aware, especially, that anybody who's trying to tell you. Now, this is when it gets interesting, as far as, I'll be honest with you, this is why sometimes Pastor Kofi, being honest, just has to say, sometimes I don't know, right? So this is where this gets interesting. If we be honest about it, here's where it gets interesting. I can't give you exactly where this happened, at least not yet. I have my suspicions, but I don't like to give opinions, so why would I give suspicions, right? Suspicions are I'm not even prepared. Suspicion is I just have a feeling even, I don't know if it's an unction yet, right? But I got this feeling that what I'm about to say is correct, and the Bible seems to back it up. But I don't have anything specifically to be like, hold on to this. So I'm just going to be honest with you about this, right? But there is a great possibility, and there's an argument, but there's a great possibility, if we keep it 100, that the 1,000 years might have already passed. Problem with this is, though, here's where I have a tough time. Because 1,000 years is supposed to be when wickedness is not what we look up to. So either 1,000 years, if it's talking about just on the earth realm, but it doesn't, right? It talks about angels and stuff like that. So if it was just on the earth realm, I could maybe look for a particular place or particular people that maybe were separated and say, huh, did they live righteously for 1,000 years, right? But that doesn't line up because that hasn't happened, right? Because it has to be basically nothing evil is being the thing that's driving. And no matter what size society you want to get into, right? No matter how Afrocentric or whatever, or Eurocentric you want to use, or Asiatic, et cetera, all these terms we have, you won't really find anybody that was out here not sinning, right? At all, or at least wasn't using some kind of evil or wickedness as the thing that was driving things forward. So more than likely 1,000 years hasn't happened. But I just got this thing where the 1,000 years, but I'd have to, I'm going to leave that there. I'm just being honest. It will go either way. There is a thought process that 1,000 years has happened already, and so we should really be looking for things because the second death is upon us. Or there's a thought process, hey, 1,000 years is getting ready to come up, and so everybody just be ready because there's going to come a time where it's going to seem like everybody all of a sudden wants to do what's right. But what's right is the thing, and this and that or whatever. Start paying attention, because if that right. When everybody begins to agree and it's a one world this, but reality is that there's still people that's just kind of waiting for the Satan to return, and once he returns, he's going to go to these places to where everybody thought everything was cool, and he's going to literally hem up all these nations, and they're going to come and be ready to go to war. But if the Satan ends up losing and he goes in the lake of fire, right? And there's persons that come up from hell and come from the grave and all that, and then there's persons who also follow the Satan. If they get thrown into the lake of fire, they're going to burn too. So that part, I'll be honest, I'm personally could see, I don't even know if that's part of the theory, because that's outside of verses 3 through 8, but I can see if that's part of the theory or that part of a theoretical conversation that happens. It's very interesting. You said, what if we're in hell? Well, the Bible tells us clearly that we're not. So if you're talking about, that's kind of more of a poetic way of thought process, and people kind of taking stuff and being like, oh, well, life truly sucks, and we're waiting to go to heaven, so what if we're all in hell now? But if you're right. But the reality is the Bible makes it clear that the devil has to be the first one to go to hell. And then after that, there will be others who end up following him in there. And those who are in hell, they will therefore be released. Right? Right, but the devil is not in hell, the devil is cast into the earth. Right? Some people would even argue with me, and I even get the argument that, hey, there's people in hell before the devil gets there. It's eternity in time. Like I said, it's difficult conversation to have, right? But yeah, so basically, as far as Shalom, shield, where the devil is, he's there, and so and the devil is put on earth, and the devil is seeking for going around earth, around us, at least those who are in the world still and have been separated. He's looking for the remnant, seeking who he may devour, right? So if he's seeking the remnant on earth and he has not gone to hell yet, and we can't be in a space to where we are like, well, we're in hell, where if we're in hell, then he can't seek us, right? So I get the poetic thought process of it, but if you're talking about looking through the prism of the kingdom or the prism of the Bible, it doesn't make sense to say that he's in hell. You said, so if someone's in hell, no, we're talking about eternity. So the Bible describes that somebody even going to heaven outside of these persons who are still waiting for the 1,000-year reign. But even still, they're waiting right now. Paul describes it as the fact that you sleep, right? You close your eyes, and when you wake up, you'll see where you are, right? Yahavah describes it like that. When there's the rich man and the poor man, is the poor man's name Lazarus, and the rich man was rich man or whatever? Or is it the rich man was Lazarus and there was a poor man, whichever one, where there was a guy who was there who was poor. He was at the temple called Beautiful, or he was at the temple, he was at a gate called Beautiful. And a person would go in and he would always beg for alms, and this person would look past him, and then all of a sudden one day both of them died at the same time. And when the rich man opened his eyes, it said he realized he was in hell, right? So there was no like, oh, okay. Like it says for him, he opened his eyes, boom, he was there. Now both of these are symbols. Now these are symbols too, to a certain degree, because we also know that there are persons who go to be judged to see if they can get in according to their actions, right? Using the same thing when we get to Revelation chapter 20, verse 12. But we can see that if somebody, going, the Bible describes it like that, they basically want to sleep, and when one awakes, and they begin to see all these things that are happening. Right? Yeah, so those are some of the, so that's some of the conversation there, but yeah. So, but the devil deceived them, he was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone. So he was in hell, bottomless pit first, and he's cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Eventually hell, and right, even eventually hell and death will be thrown into the lake of fire as well, which means that death will have no power in anybody who thought to put their right. Basically, put it like this: whoever you follow, you're right, is wherever you are led to, right? Whoever you follow is where you're led to. And otherwise, if you follow the devil, where's he going? Not only did he go to hell, and he came back, but now he's going where? He's going to the lake of fire. He's going to burn up. Okay? If you follow after stuff that gets you in hell, hell will be thrown to the lake of fire. Where are you going to go? Where hell goes. If you follow things that are extremely like death, into death, things that cause death will be thrown in the lake of fire. Right? So where would you go? Right? If you follow, I think I made the point, right? But whoever you follow, just realize they have a destination. You should probably try to figure out where the destination is, right? If I'm in DC and I'm getting on the bus, right? The P6 and the P12, they got similar routes, but they're not the same route, right? The A2, the A6, the A8, they'll all get me to a certain point, but some of them won't take me, past where, if I'm trying to get to the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. in South Avenue or Southern Avenue, whatever that is, I won't be able to get to the same place, right? Like they're different. They might be the same, the same route might lead, but there are different ways of getting there, right? But I might want to make sure I know the destination. I might want to know which bus I'm getting on, right? The devil, right? It says in the scripture, do not think it's strange, these things that I'm saying to you, because just as the devil can change himself into an angel of light, then don't be surprised if an apostle can change themselves into an angel of light, right? Because the devil, once again, the second beast, especially talking about Antichrist spirit, has the ability to look like a lamb, look like Christ in a certain way, up to a certain point. But if you listen to what they say, they sound like the serpent. Once we get there, now verse 11, I saw the great white throne, whose face was upon it, heaven and earth fled away, verse 11. Now we see that heaven and earth has passed away after this. And verse 12, right, no matter what your stature is, you have to be judged by the law. And even those in hell, and even those that are dead, who were not part of the first resurrection, are now resurrected. That's the second resurrection. But when they're resurrected now, we have to see what's going to happen with them with the second death. Right? First resurrection was for the martyrs, right, who were with Christ for 1,000 years, and then there's another group that doesn't really exactly tell us what's there. Some might say it's Israel, because when you go into Revelation 22 and 21, you got to look at the names that are going to be up as you go into the kingdom and into Jerusalem, New Jerusalem, as well as look at the foundation, the 12 names, more than likely of the apostles that will be on the bottom and all that. And you can say, like that's pretty decent. It's still a theory, but it's pretty decent. It makes sense. That being said, though, we don't exactly know, but we know that there's a first resurrection. That first resurrection happens with those who are resurrected with Christ, and then there's another resurrection right at the end of the 1,000-year reign, as the devil is being loosed. There's others who will never even have to worry about what's going on with the Satan. Then after that, there's a second resurrection after the devil comes through, is defeated, and goes into the lake of fire and all that. Then you'll see that basically there's a second resurrection of those that live through the 1,000 years, those who are lived through the 1,000 years, and is looking specifically at works still in verse 12 and 13 of Revelation 20. What are your works? What are your works? right? The lake of fire, or the fire pit, the lake of fire, place of fire and brimstone will have the devil, it will have hell, it will have death, it will have those who are disobedient and wanted to follow the devil. They'll be cast into the lake of fire as well. If their name is not found written in the book of life, that's what Revelation 20 verse 15 says. If your name is not found written in the book of life, now once again, what does Revelation 20 verse 12 tell us? That in order for your name to be in the scroll in the book of life, you have to first look at the other scrolls and books to see if you've been following the law. And the only way we can see if you have true faith in it is to see if you worked it. If you didn't work it, then you don't get the reward. We can go there real quick. Elder Tamber, what you say, Revelation 21 verse 8? Oh, okay, I see. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Come on, thank you for that. Matter of fact, let me see something real quick. We're just gonna read this. I don't even know. I don't always do this, you know, when you be reading your Bible and you study and you see certain scriptures, because sometimes they don't always equate, right? Or sometimes we just see them, we're going there. But Holy Spirit said, hit this real quick. We're gonna run this real quick. This is the last thing for today. Right? This is Ezekiel chapter 48. We're going to read verses 30 through 35. Ezekiel, which by the way, chapters 1 and 2, is talking about Revelation as well. So this is a great read here. Ezekiel will teach you some things about the book of Revelation, right? Last thing for today, though, and then we'll come back with Q&A again tomorrow. To that, my Shabbat, thank you, family, for being on. We very much so appreciate you, your time, your presence, your effort, your energy, all this great stuff. Hopefully, you got some great stuff out of today. I hope that you did at least. All righty. Last thing for today. Ezekiel chapter 48 and verse 30, it says, and these are the goings out of the city of the north side, 4,500 measures. And the gates of the city shall be the names of the branches of Israel, the nations of Israel, the sons of Israel. 3 gates northward, 1 gate of Reuben, 1 gate of Judah, 1 gate of Levi. By the way, this is the way that they had it set up with the Ark of the Covenant, if you don't know this. So this is not a new setup. This is not something we just trying to say, oh, this and that, or get over on big persons. This was the setup even in the wilderness. So when we do Feast of Tabernacles and stuff, and we were out, there would be Ark of the Covenant in the center, and the Ark of the Covenant would have the names posted of each nation, of each of the sons of Israel, and then every nation would sleep on the side where their stuff was established. So this is basically saying the same thing that's been going on, whether we were in the wilderness or in the kingdom, is the same housing situation that Yahavah is going to have us in heaven, right? In the mansions, okay? So verse 30, and these are the goings out of the city of the north side, 4,500 measures, right? 4,500 measures. And the gates of the city shall be after the names, or the authorities, the branches, the nations, the names of Israel. 3 gates northward. The northward ones is Reuben, Judah, and Levi. Firstborn, praise, priest. That's north. All right? And at the east, 4,503 gates, right? Which, by the way, if you don't know, the east side, whenever there's an east wind or something like that that blows, you have to recognize and realize when you're dealing with the east, you're actually dealing with something that's considered to be something that can destroy, right? The locust blew in from the east, etc. So, verse 31, and the gates of the city shall be after the names of the nations, verse 32, and at the east, 4,500, and 3 gates, and 1 gate of Joseph, 1 gate of Benjamin, 1 gate of who? Of Dan, okay? So Benjamin being the one who was frontline fighter, right? Joseph being the one who became second in command of all of Kemet, and Dan being the judge. Now this is a little different because by this point when we get to Revelation chapter 7, Dan is no longer one of the names. Ephraim is, and we talked about that in another live session. If you have questions about that, bring it up for me tomorrow, please. Ezekiel 48 verse 33, and at the south side, 4,500 measures and 3 gates, 1 gate of Simeon, 1 gate of Issachar, 1 of Zebulun. Right? So it's talking about what we're owed, recompense. It's talking about the fact that we actually are heard. And talking about, I'm sorry, I'm having a moment. And talking about basically atonement, right? Verse 34, at the west 4,500, and their gates, one gate of God, which translates into truth, right? One gate of Asher, which is happy, and one gate of Naphtali, which is wrestling. Verse 35, it was round about 18,000 measures, and the name of the city that they shall be, Yahavah, there. Yahavah is there. That would be the name of the city. Okay? So in a very similar fashion, we're seeing that go on into Revelation chapter 21. Right? Revelation chapter 21 is giving us the same thing. Right? And if we were to start back at verse 6, it would actually read like this. It says, At Yahashua, or really the angel, Assad, and said, it is done. Right? And I, Alav, Atav, right? I am the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. He that overcometh, right? And how do we overcome? We overcome by our testimony. We overcome by the word. John says, little children, you have already overcome. Right? John the Revelator said, little children, you have already overcome. He said that in 1 John, right? So we overcome, right, by doing the will of Yah. We are more than overcomers because of he who is in us, right? So he that overcometh shall inherit all things. And I, right, and I will be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But the fearful, see, but those who reverence the world, and unbelieving, and the abominable, and the murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burned with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. All right, we'll leave that there for today. Right? So there's a lot in there. I still am not I'm still not very, very, very familiar with the, I understand the term stuff now. I see where they got it from as far as the little season. I'm not sure about all the stuff that goes with the theologies or the theories and the fights that might even be in there intellectually, homiletically, hermeneutically, apologetically, etc. So I'd have to do more research on that, but that's what we got as far as if we just read what's there. I think that was Minister Keita. I saw pop in real quick. How you doing? So I'll leave that there for today. It is over time, and I will see you guys this evening, and we'll have a little chat. I think we're going to talk about the freedom of speech thing, since that seems to be the next thing that everybody's been talking about. We'll have our real talk this evening. I think that's what we're going to start talking about, real talk, as we end up kind of going in the evening sessions. So if you can join us on TikTok and YouTube later on. TikTok will be on Kofi_42. YouTube will be in the same platform that you see. Thank you for joining us today through the podcast, Clapper. And by the way, I uploaded a whole bunch of stuff on the podcast, not just of myself, but even other persons speaking. So it should be like pretty much totally up to date as far as you being able to go on there and see who said what, when they said what, get these messages. Those who are on Patreon, you're going to see a bunch of them flood your area. I couldn't make it because whenever I'm on the road and wherever we get off schedule a little bit and stuff, I can't always guarantee I'm going to have signal while I'm traveling. So we didn't have our Feast of Tabernacles meeting on Monday evening because we had Feast of Trumpets. By the way, the sermon is up online for you if you'd like to be able to catch that. And thank you everybody who came out to Houston, even those who wanted to come out but couldn't. But thank you everybody who came out personally to Houston, those who came on virtual spaces with us. Hopefully you enjoyed. Where we, excuse me. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. What went on. That'll be up forever and a day as part of our as part of our Holy Days series as well. So you can go and look at that, and hopefully you enjoy it. But since we had that on Monday, we didn't do Feast of Tabernacles meeting. I did put a recording out for everybody on Wednesday through the Google Calendar invite. So if you didn't see it or didn't click on the link, or you don't have the link, if you check your email, please check the email. I put a bunch of information out there again, repeating on some things, having a couple of new pieces of information as well. I also, to the ministerial staff for October 1st, which is coming up, right? Today's September 25th. So October 1st is fast approaching. next week, I believe it's Wednesday, we're gonna have the Day of Atonement, and that'll be in Marietta, Georgia area for those that are coming in person. And for everybody else, you know, please feel free to join us virtually. I sent something out for ministerial staff specifically, and I sent a little video to go with it. So if you can, please, man, please, sir, especially ministerial staff, look at that video for us. Also, too, if there's somebody who's interested, I need to speak with you first, and but especially, or if you're not part of, you know, SOC or whatever, but if you are part of SOC and you've been with us for a little while, and you'd like to maybe possibly help out in some way, including to sing, if it's not even for Day of Atonement, but if it's for, you know, different holy days or different events that we have when we meet up, feel free to reach out and contact and connect with us. And we'd love to have somebody, if they can, bless us with their voice from time to time. I'm starting to work out some of the stuff, but I've gotten to a place where I talk way too much. And so the days that I can sing are few and far in between. So if you guys who have said that you're interested or still interested in maybe recording some yourself singing different parts for us so that we can have some little SOC flavor on some of this music and stuff coming up as well, feel free. Don't forget also too, in music we have brothers like Brother TJ, Brother Cole, and others who do music as well. But if you're somebody who's interested in that, we might send you a little something with something called a metronome. If you don't know what that is, that's something to make sure that you keep the beats, you know, wherever you are. And have you do a little bit of recording for us and send the recordings back. But we'll talk about that later on. But long story short, if you would like, we got an opening spot. We had somebody we were thinking might be able to sing for us for Day of Atonement, but they won't be able to. If not, we'll still be able to have it covered. But if somebody has that gift and would like to come and bless us with something, we'd love to have you use your gift. We appreciate you all. We're not in an area where I can do a shout out, Italy, right? Or at least I don't know how to be taken. So just to be sure, I'll let you guys, if y'all want to just kind of look at the water a little bit, you're more than welcome to. And if you want to do the shout out that way, feel free to. Those of you who know how the shout out works, feel free to go ahead and get ready for that. But I thank you all for being on. I appreciate you. We don't have anything else for today. Or no, it's Thursday. So I guess we have Spanish class for the babies, and at 4 o'clock it's supposed to be mathematics. I'm not sure. We might, just because of situation and signal and all that stuff, and find another place and everything, and the rain continuing to pick up and getting on the devices. I don't know. We'll see. But if we don't meet in person like we did yesterday, or you know, well, I need to finish doing. We'll put out recordings and everything. But feel free to look at that. Thank you everybody for being on. I very much so appreciate you. I'm not going to keep you any longer than we're supposed to. It's a Q&A day, so we've been a little longer than we usually do, but that's all right. Thank you guys for the questions, comments, and concerns. I think this is a decent spot for us to continue in. Seems like the signal was pretty decent here for all platforms. So thank you everybody once again joining us. If you're coming over from the podcast, Clapper, IG, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. And by the way too, please man, please sir, if you are able to, it would help us out a lot. If you're able to, if you're on IG, don't worry about joining up and all that stuff, but if you're not, but if you're on IG, Instagram, something like that, if you don't mind, you know, post a little, if you don't mind, maybe post a little something on there, or look for some of our stuff, hashtag find Kofi, hashtag SOC, stuff like that. Put both of them in there, you should find us pretty easily. We're trying to see if we can build that up at least to whatever the threshold is to go live again, so we can get back into some of that stuff and we actually have some stuff that we were planning on doing, and IG changed the standard right when we were getting ready to do all this stuff. So if you're able to help us with that, that would help us get the word across and stuff. I'm not worried about getting the millions and stuff, just if we can make sure we can go live. There's certain things that we'd like to be able to use that for down the road, and for different guests and things of that nature. And it would truly be of help to us if you could help us out. So if you do, just look for me, Kofi Ofori, hashtag find Kofi, hashtag SOC, hashtag a safe place. Put a version, or put all three of them together if you can. You'll probably come across us pretty easily. But thank you again. I honor you. I honor your journey. I honor your presence. We appreciate you. And we look forward to being with you guys later this evening. So later this evening at 8 p.m. New York time, we'll be on YouTube, on TikTok, but on Kofi_42. This is Kofi_43. But we'll be on Kofi_42. And once again, yeah, thank you for everything. We appreciate you all. Hope that you have a great day. Those of you who know how to shout out works or whatever, feel free to lead the way. And as always, we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Alma. And remember, as always, family, that you are loved, you are necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, take care, peace and blessings. Barak Shalom. Talk to you soon.